A chief lay dying, poisoned by his own people. A captive woman held the only cure, but saving him meant signing her own death warrant. This is a story of betrayal hidden in sacred rituals, of enemies forced into impossible alliances, and of a love that defied every boundary. Before we begin, I invite you to journey with me to the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels across the world. Now, let me take you back to the Texas frontier, where the blazing sun witnessed secrets that would change everything. The heat was murderous. It rose from the cracked earth in shimmering waves, distorting the horizon until land and sky blurred into one suffocating mass. Chief Rokan Vera had known this heat his entire life, had fought under it, hunted through it, built his strength against it. But now, trapped inside his lodge while his body consumed itself from within, the heat felt different, personal, like it was waiting for him to die. He tried to sit up, failed. His arms trembled with the effort, muscles that had once wielded a war club with deadly precision, now unable to support his own weight. Sweat poured down his face, stinging his eyes, pooling in the hollow of his throat. The fever came in waves. Sometimes he was lucid, sometimes he wasn't. Right now, he could think clearly enough to hate what he'd become. "Drink this." The voice belonged to Dakota, his younger brother. Rokan turned his head. Even that small movement required concentration, and saw Dakota kneeling beside him, holding the ceremonial cup. The one their father had used, the one that had passed to Rokan when he became chief 3 years ago. 3 years, the same amount of time he'd been sick. "I'm not thirsty," Rokan said. His voice came out rough, barely recognizable. "You need to drink. You're burning up." "Then let me burn." Dakota's jaw tightened. "The council is meeting again. You know what they're discussing." Rokan knew. They were discussing Dakar Kesh, the man who would take power if Rokan died without an heir. The man who smiled too easily and spoke in words that sounded reasonable until you realized they meant nothing. The man half the warriors already looked to instead of their dying chief. "Let them discuss," Rokan said. "You're giving up." "I'm being realistic." Rokan closed his eyes. "Whatever's killing me has had 3 years to finish the job. It's patient. I'm not going to outlast it. You don't know that. I know I can barely stand. I know I haven't held a weapon in 6 months. I know the last time I tried to address the council, I collapsed before I could finish speaking." He opened his eyes, met his brother's gaze. "What exactly am I supposed to be hopeful about?" Dakota set the cup down with more force than necessary. Water sloshed over the rim. "Fine, die then, but don't pretend it's inevitable. You're choosing this." He left before Rokan could respond. The silence that followed felt heavier than the heat. Rokan stared at the ceiling of the lodge, buffalo hide stretched across wooden poles, the same design his people had used for generations. Strong, practical, built to last, unlike him. Outside, he could hear the sounds of the camp, children playing, women preparing food, men sharpening weapons, voices rising and falling in conversation. Normal life continuing around him while he rotted away in the dark. He closed his eyes again. The dreams came almost immediately. They always did now, feverish, disjointed things that felt more real than waking. In them, he was strong again. Running, hunting, fighting. His body obeyed him. His people followed him. He was the chief he was supposed to be. Then he'd wake up, and the truth would crash down like a stone. The sound of raised voices pulled him back to consciousness. Angry voices, coming closer. Rokan forced himself up on one elbow, head swimming. The entrance flap of the lodge tore open, and Dakar Kesh stepped inside, followed by 2 warriors. Behind them, Dakota was arguing, but Dakar ignored him. "Chief Rokan," Dakar said, his tone carrying just enough respect to sound proper and just enough pity to be insulting. "Forgive the intrusion, but there's a matter that requires your attention." "Get out," Rokan said. "We've captured someone. An outsider. A woman." "I said get out." "She was scouting our camp, or perhaps attempting to steal. Either way, she's white, likely part of a settlement group." Dakar paused, studying Rokan with eyes that calculated everything. "The council believes she should be questioned," then executed. Then do it. You don't need my permission. Actually, we do. You're still chief. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. For now, they seemed to say. But there's something unusual about this one. She claims she can help you. Rokan almost laughed. Help me! She says she understands medicine, that she's seen sickness like yours before. And you believe her? No, Dakar said flatly. I think she's lying to save her own life. But some of the council members think we should at least hear what she has to say, before we kill her. Rokan knew what this was. Political theater, Dakar demonstrating his control, showing the tribe that he was the one making decisions while their chief wasted away. The smart move would be to refuse, to assert whatever authority he had left. But Rokan was so tired of being smart. Fine. Bring her. Dakar smiled. I thought you might say that. Bertson. They dragged her in like a captured animal. 2 warriors held her arms, practically carrying her between them. Her wrists were bound with leather cord, face dirty, clothes torn. She looked young, mid-20s maybe, with dark blonde hair that had come loose from whatever tie she'd used to keep it back. Her eyes swept the interior of the lodge, taking in everything with a sharpness that suggested fear hadn't shut down her ability to think. When she saw Rokan lying on his sleeping platform, something flickered across her face. Not pity. He would have hated that. Curiosity, maybe. Assessment. This is her, Dakar said unnecessarily. The outsider, she won't give her name. The woman's eyes flicked to Dakar, then back to Rokan. Elena Whitmore. My name is Elena Whitmore. Her voice was steady, scared, but controlling it. Rokan had seen enough captured enemies to know the difference between someone who had given up and someone who was still fighting. Why were you near our camp? Rokan asked. I wasn't near your camp. I was following a deer trail 2 miles south. Your hunting party found me. That's a lie, one of the warriors holding her said. We found her a 1/4 mile from the western boundary. Elena turned to look at him. Because your hunters chased me there. I ran. That's what happens when armed men appear out of nowhere. Convenient story, Dakar said. It's the truth. The truth is you're a spy or a scout, testing our defenses. I'm neither. I'm a... She hesitated, seemed to search for the right word. I'm a healer. I work with a medical missionary group. We were traveling west when our wagon broke down. I went looking for help and got lost. Dakar laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. A healer? How fortunate. And I suppose you just happened to get lost near a camp where the chief is dying? I didn't know there was a camp here at all until your men grabbed me. Yet somehow you claim you can cure him. Elena's gaze returned to Rokan. I didn't say I could cure him. I said I might be able to help. If he's sick, I mean. If he's dying from an old wound or something else, then no, probably not. But if it's an illness... She trailed off, eyes narrowing slightly as she studied him. How long have you been sick? Rokan found himself answering before he'd decided to. 3 years? Constant symptoms, or does it come and go? Constant, getting worse. Fever? Yes. Weakness, difficulty moving? Obviously. Elena nodded slowly, her expression distant, like she was working through something in her mind. Any stomach pain? Nausea? Sometimes. What about your fingernails? Are they brittle? Discolored? Rokan looked at his hands. His nails had turned slightly gray over the past year, something he'd noticed but hadn't thought much about. Yes. Something changed in Elena's face. Not triumph exactly, but a kind of recognition. I need to examine you properly. Check your eyes, your skin, your... Enough, Dakar interrupted. This is a waste of time. She's telling you what you want to hear to save herself. Maybe, Rokan said, or maybe she actually knows something. He looked at Elena. If I let you examine me, what are you looking for? Signs of poison. The lodge went silent. Even Dakar seemed caught off guard. Poison? The symptoms you're describing, progressive weakness over years, fever, gray nails, those aren't typical of any disease I know, but they do match certain types of chronic poisoning, heavy metals specifically. That's absurd, Dakar said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Why would someone poison the chief? One of the warriors asked. Elena shrugged as much as her bound hands allowed. I have no idea. I don't know anything about your politics, but medically speaking, what he's describing sounds more like toxin exposure than illness. Rokan's mind was racing despite the fever fog. Poison. Someone deliberately killing him over years, slowly enough that it would look natural. Slowly enough that by the time he died, a successor would already be in place. His eyes found Dakar. Dakar met his gaze without flinching. This is ridiculous. She's manipulating you, creating paranoia to make herself valuable. Then let her examine me, Rokan said. If she's lying, we'll know soon enough. And if she's not lying? Dakota spoke up for the first time, his voice tight. If someone really has been poisoning you? Then we find out who. Dakar's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. Trusting an outsider, entertaining her wild accusations, it makes you look weak. The council will see this as further proof you're not fit to lead. The council isn't here. You are. Rokan pushed himself up to a sitting position, the effort making his vision swim. And I'm still chief. Which means when I say I want her to examine me, that's what happens. For a moment, Dakar looked like he might argue further. Then he smiled, that same empty political smile. Of course. Whatever you think is best. He nodded to the warriors holding Elena. Untie her. Let her play healer. We'll see how long this game lasts. The warriors exchanged uncertain glances but obeyed, cutting the cords around Elena's wrists. She rubbed her arms where the leather had left marks, eyes never leaving Dakar as he and his men filed out of the lodge. When they were alone, just Rokan, Elena, and Dakota standing guard by the entrance, Elena let out a long breath. That man wants you dead, she said quietly. I know. No, I mean he really wants you dead, the way he looked at you just now. She shook her head. I've seen a lot of expressions in my work. That was murder. Elena, Rokan said, testing the name. That's what you called yourself? Yes. Are you really a healer? Yes. And you really think I'm being poisoned? She moved closer, lowering herself to sit cross-legged beside his sleeping platform. This close, he could see the freckles across her nose, the way her hands shook slightly, from fear or exhaustion or both. I think it's possible, she said. Can I look at your eyes? Rokan nodded. She leaned in, studying his face with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Her fingers touched his jaw, gentle, clinical, tilting his head to catch the light from the entrance. Your sclera is slightly yellow, classic sign of liver stress. She pulled down his lower eyelid. And there's a gray line along your gums. That combined with the nail discoloration. She sat back. I need to know what you eat and drink. Specifically, is there anything you consume regularly that others don't? The ceremonial cup, Dakota said from the doorway. He drinks from it every morning. It was our father's. Elena's head turned sharply. A cup? What's it made of? I don't know. Metal? It's old. Been in the family for generations. Show me. Dakota retrieved the cup from where it sat on a low wooden table. It was tarnished, the surface mottled with age. Elena took it carefully, turning it over in her hands, running her fingers along the inside. Do you clean this? Yes, Dakota said. Water and sand, like everything else. But not thoroughly. Look, there's buildup in the engravings. She held it up to the light. This could be it. If this cup is made from lead or another toxic metal and he's been drinking from it every day for 3 years, it's poisoning him, Rokan finished. Maybe. Probably. I'd need to test it to be sure, but everything fits. She set the cup down like it was dangerous. Lead poisoning is slow, cumulative. The body can't process it, so it builds up in the tissues, especially bone. Over time, it causes exactly what you're experiencing: weakness, pain, cognitive issues, organ damage. Can it be cured? Dakota's voice was sharp with hope. Not cured, but if we stop the exposure, the body can start to heal, slowly. He'll need treatment, things that help bind the lead so it can be eliminated. And time. A lot of time. Rokan looked at the cup that had been killing him, his father's cup. The symbol of leadership passed down through generations, the thing he'd been so proud to inherit. "Where did this cup come from?" he asked Dakota. "Father received it as a gift when he became chief." "From who?" Dakota's face went pale. "From Dakar's family. It was meant to honor him." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Dakar's family had given his father a poisoned cup. His father had died after 10 years of using it, of what everyone assumed was old age and battle injuries. Then the cup had passed to Rokan, and he'd been dying for 3 years. "It wasn't an accident," Rokan said quietly. "They planned this, gave my father a slow death, waited for me to inherit, then watched as the same thing happened to me." "You don't know that for certain," Elena said, but she didn't sound convinced. "Don't I? Dakar's been positioning himself to take over since I got sick. The council already sees him as the stronger leader. If I die, he becomes chief. And if he becomes chief with a cup that's killed 2 leaders before him, he'll just make sure the next heir gets the same gift." "Jesus," Elena whispered. Rokan looked at her. "What?" "Nothing. This is insane. You're being murdered with your own ceremonial cup." "Can you help me?" The question came out harder than he intended, but he needed to know. "Really help me, not just make me comfortable while I die?" Elena met his eyes. "I think so. If we act now. If we can get the right herbs and minerals to help flush the toxin. If your organs aren't too damaged already." She paused. "But I need to be honest with you. Even if everything goes perfectly, you're going to be weak for a long time. Months, maybe years. And there's no guarantee of full recovery. But I won't get worse? Not if we stop using the cup and start treatment. Then do it." "Rokan?" Dakota started. "I'm not debating this," Rokan cut him off. "She's right. Everything she's saying makes sense. And if she's wrong, I'm dying anyway. What do I have to lose?" "Your dignity, your authority, the council's respect." Dakota moved closer, lowering his voice. "If you announce that you've been poisoned by Dakar's family, you're accusing one of the most powerful families in the tribe of murder. That means war. Internal war, while you're too weak to fight it. Then we don't announce it. Not yet." Rokan's mind was working faster now. Fever be damned. "We tell them Elena's treating me with different methods. New medicine. We don't mention poison until I'm strong enough to deal with the consequences." Dakar won't allow it. He'll see her as a threat." "He already does," Elena pointed out. "That's why he wanted me dead immediately." "But you invited me in. Now he has to wait and see what happens." "What happens when you're alone and vulnerable?" Dakota asked her bluntly. She didn't have an answer for that. Rokan struggled to his feet, using the wooden frame of the sleeping platform for support. His legs shook, barely holding his weight, but he managed to stand. "From now on, Elena stays in this lodge, under guard. Anyone who wants to harm her has to go through me first." He looked at his brother. "And you? Are you with me on this?" Dakota's expression was conflicted, but he nodded. "Always." "Good. Then here's what we're going to do." 1. The council met at sunset. The gathering space was a cleared area in the center of camp, large enough for the entire tribe to assemble when necessary. Tonight, only the senior members sat in the circle, 12 men and 3 women, each representing different family lines and warrior societies. Dakar sat among them, looking relaxed and confident. He'd probably spent the afternoon securing votes, Rokan thought, making promises, calling in favors, ensuring that whatever happened tonight, he'd come out stronger. Rokan approached the circle slowly, using a walking stick for support. Dakota walked beside him. Elena followed a few steps behind, escorted by 2 warriors Dakota trusted. The murmuring died as they reached the fire. "Chief Rokan," one of the council elders said, his tone formal but strained, "we did not expect you to attend tonight." "I'm still chief," Rokan said, lowering himself carefully to sit. "Where else would I be?" Dakar's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Of course. We're glad to see you, though perhaps you should save your strength." "My strength is my concern." "Certainly. Just as the outsider is the council's concern." Dakar gestured to Elena. "We've been discussing what should be done with her." "I know what you've been discussing. You want her executed. It's the safest choice. We can't trust her. She's white, which means her people are likely nearby, searching for her. Every day we keep her is a day we risk discovery. Elena is a healer, Rokan said. She's offered to help me. With respect, Chief, we've had healers work on you before. None of them have succeeded. None of them identified what was actually wrong. That got their attention. The council members leaned forward, exchanging glances. What do you mean? The elder asked. Rokan had practiced this part. Elena believes my illness isn't natural. She thinks I've been exposed to something toxic, a poison in my food or water. The reaction was immediate: shock, anger, denial. Voices rose, overlapping. Poison? That's impossible. Who would dare? This is her way of making herself valuable, Dakar interrupted smoothly, creating fear and suspicion to ensure we don't kill her. It's obvious. Then explain my symptoms, Rokan said. Explain why they match exactly what Elena described. Explain the discoloration in my nails, the damage to my liver, the progressive weakness that no traditional healing has addressed. Explain how a white woman who we captured this morning suddenly knows more about your condition than our own healers, Dakar countered. I can explain that, Elena said quietly. All eyes turned to her. She looked terrified, but she didn't back down. I trained with doctors, real doctors, in the East, before I came west with the missionary group. I've studied medicine, anatomy, toxicology, things your healers wouldn't have access to. And I'm telling you, Chief Rokan's symptoms are consistent with heavy metal poisoning. From what source? One of the council women asked. Elena hesitated. This was the dangerous part. Rokan could see her weighing how much to reveal. I can't say for certain without testing, but there are common sources. Contaminated water, certain vessels used for drinking or cooking, decorative items that degrade over time. She was being careful not to mention the cup directly. Smart. Dakar wasn't buying it. This is absurd. You're asking us to trust the word of a captive who will say anything to survive. I'm asking you to let me try, Elena said. Give me 1 month. Let me treat him with methods designed to eliminate toxins from the body. If he doesn't improve, you can do whatever you want with me. But if he does improve, it proves nothing, Dakar said. Natural recovery happens. You can't claim credit for coincidence. Can I? Elena's voice gained strength. If I give him specific treatments and he shows specific improvements that directly correlate with those treatments, that's not coincidence. That's cause and effect. You're talking like this is some kind of experiment. He's our chief, not your test subject. He's a dying man who has nothing to lose by trying something new. The words hung in the air. Harsh, but true. The elder who'd spoken earlier raised his hand for silence. The question before us is simple. Do we execute the outsider immediately, or do we allow her to attempt treatment for our chief? He looked around the circle. Those in favor of immediate execution? 5 hands rose, including Dakar's. Those in favor of allowing treatment? 7 hands rose. Rokan felt something unknot in his chest. Not a majority by much, but enough. The elder nodded slowly. The council has spoken. The outsider will be permitted to treat Chief Rokan for a period of 30 days. If he shows improvement, we will reconsider her status. If he does not, he left the sentence unfinished. Dakar stood abruptly. This is a mistake. When it fails, and it will fail, remember that I warned you. He walked away from the circle without waiting to be dismissed. Rokan watched him go, tracking the rigid line of his shoulders, the controlled anger in his movements. Dakar had lost tonight. Not decisively, not permanently, but enough to hurt. And Rokan knew from experience that wounded pride was more dangerous than open hostility. Thank you, he said to the council. You won't regret this. He hoped that was true. The first week was brutal. Elena worked with Rokan's body like she was fighting a war against time, and in a way, she was. She needed to show improvement quickly enough to justify the council's decision, but not so quickly that it would seem suspicious or unsustainable. She started by completely changing his diet. Out went anything that might contain trace metals, certain clay vessels, specific foods that accumulated environmental toxins. She prepared carefully controlled meals using ingredients she'd verified herself. Then came the treatment. She'd found a plant growing near the river that she called milk thistle, said it helped protect the liver. Another herb for binding heavy metals in the digestive tract. Clean water, carefully sourced. Specific minerals that supposedly help the body eliminate toxins. Roken had no idea if any of it was actually working or if it was elaborate theater, but he went along with it because the alternative was death. "Drink this," Elena said, handing him a cup. A different cup, this one carved from horn, filled with something that smelled like wet earth. "What is it?" "Better if you don't know. Trust me." "That's asking a lot from someone who was trying to kill me a week ago." "I was never trying to kill you. Your own people were doing that just fine." She had a point. Roken drank. It tasted as bad as it smelled, coating his tongue with bitterness that didn't fade. He forced it down, handed the cup back. "How do you feel?" Elena asked. "Like I drank dirt." "I mean overall. Any changes?" He considered. The fever had been lower the past few days. Not gone, but less intense. And this morning, he'd managed to stand without using the support frame. "Maybe," he admitted. "It's hard to tell if it's real or if I just want it to be real." "That's normal. The mind plays tricks when you're desperate." She settled onto the ground across from him, cross-legged, professional. They'd fallen into a routine over the past week. Treatment in the morning, assessment in the evening, constant monitoring in between. "But I think you are improving. Your color is better. You're holding down food more consistently. Which means the council won't kill you at the end of the month." "That would be nice." A comfortable silence fell between them. Rokan had noticed that happening more often, moments where they didn't need to fill the space with words. It was strange, given that she was his captive and he was her dying patient. Strange, but not unwelcome. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said. "You've been poking and prodding me for a week. I think questions are allowed." "Why didn't you have children? An heir, I mean. If you'd had a son, Dakar wouldn't be in position to take over." The question landed harder than she probably intended. Rokan looked away toward the lodge entrance where afternoon light filtered through the hide covering. "I had a wife," he said finally. "She died in childbirth. The baby died too." "God, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "It was 8 years ago, before I became chief. Before any of this." He forced himself to look back at her. Afterward, I couldn't imagine replacing her. So I didn't." Elena nodded slowly. "That must have been impossibly hard." "It was. But you know what was harder? Realizing that my grief put my entire people at risk. If I'd remarried, had children, there would be a clear succession. Instead, I left a power vacuum that Dakar has been filling for 3 years. That's not your fault, isn't it? I'm the chief. My decisions affect everyone, and I chose grief over duty. You chose to be human over being a symbol. There's no shame in that." Roken wanted to believe her, but leadership didn't allow for such convenient absolutions. The entrance flap moved, and Dakota stepped inside, his expression grim. "What's wrong?" Roken asked immediately. "Dakar's been talking to the council members, quietly, individually, building support. For what? For removing you, not killing you. That would be too obvious. But declaring you unfit to lead and installing himself as acting chief until you recover. If you recover." Roken's jaw tightened. "When?" "They're planning to bring it up in 5 days, during the full council session." 5 days. Less than half the month Elena had been promised. "What do we do?" Dakota asked. Rokan looked at Elena. "Can I stand in front of the council in 5 days and look like a leader?" She bit her lip, thinking. "Maybe, if we push the treatment hard, if we're lucky, if your body responds well, maybe. But it's risky. Pushing too fast could set you back. Not pushing at all means I lose everything." "Roken, 5 days," he said firmly. "Make it work." The next 4 days nearly killed him. Elena intensified the treatment to a punishing degree. More herbs, more water, more carefully prepared meals designed to flush his system. She had him walking multiple times per day, pushing his weakened muscles until they shook. She monitored everything, his pulse, his temperature, his mental clarity. It was working. He could feel it, like something dark and heavy slowly lifting from his body. But it left him exhausted in a new way, not the feverish weakness of before, but a bone-deep fatigue from the sheer effort of healing. On the morning of the fourth day, he managed to walk across the lodge without support. "Again," Elena said. "I just did it. And now you'll do it again. The council won't be impressed by one crossing. You need to look strong enough to lead." Rokan turned, walked back, turned again. His legs protested but held. "Better," Elena said. "Now, with your head up. You're a chief, not a patient." "I'm both. In 5 hours, you can only be one." She was right. The council session was scheduled for sunset. Dakar would present his case for removing Rokan from power. The council would debate, and Rokan would need to prove he was still fit to lead. "How do I look?" he asked. Elena studied him critically. "Honestly, better than I expected. The yellow in your eyes is mostly gone. You're standing straighter, but you're still thin and you tire quickly. Anyone paying attention will see that. Then I'll have to make sure they're not paying attention to my weakness." "How?" Rokan smiled. It felt strange on his face. He hadn't smiled properly in months. "By giving them something else to focus on." Ches. The council gathered at sunset, as tradition demanded. Rokan arrived early before most of the members. He dressed carefully, his ceremonial clothes, the ones he wore for important decisions. They hung looser than they used to, but Elena had helped him bind them properly so the difference wasn't immediately obvious. He sat in the chief's place, back straight, breathing controlled, acting the part until it became real. The council members began arriving. Some looked surprised to see him already seated. Others, Dakar among them, showed no reaction at all. When everyone had assembled, the elder who moderated sessions raised his hand for attention. "We gather tonight to discuss the leadership of our people. Dakar Kesh has requested time to address a concern." "Dakar?" Dakar stood. He'd prepared for this. Rokan could see it in the way he held himself, the careful arrangement of his words. "Thank you. I come before you not out of ambition, but out of duty. For 3 years, we have watched our chief suffer. We have all hoped for his recovery, but hope alone does not lead a people." He paused, letting that sink in. "Chief Rokan cannot hunt, he cannot fight, he cannot attend our ceremonies or represent us in negotiations with other tribes. He is a good man, a brave warrior, but he is no longer capable of being our chief." "I'm sitting right here," Rokan said mildly. "If you have accusations, make them to my face." Dakar turned to him. "These are not accusations, they are observations. You have been ill for 3 years. The outsider's treatments may have helped, or they may be temporary relief before inevitable decline. We cannot risk our future on uncertainty." "What do you propose?" "That you step down. Take time to heal properly, without the burden of leadership. I will serve as acting chief until you have fully recovered, if you recover." There it was, the play for power wrapped in concern. "And if I refuse?" Rokan asked. "Then I ask the council to make the decision for you." Murmurs ran through the gathered members. Some looked uncomfortable, others thoughtful. Dakar had support, that much was clear. Rokan stood. It wasn't graceful, it wasn't easy, but he stood without support, without showing the effort it cost him. "You're right about one thing," he said. "I have been sick. For 3 years, I've been dying slowly, and no one knew why." He looked around the circle, meeting eyes. But Elena Whitmore figured it out. And more than that, she's helping me recover. "You look better," Dakar acknowledged. "But appearances can be deceiving. You're still weak." "Weaker than I was. Stronger than I'll be." Rokan took a breath. Elena identified that I was being poisoned. Heavy metal poisoning, accumulating over years. She's been treating it, and it's working. The council erupted in questions. Where was the poison? How was it administered? Who was responsible? Rokan raised his hand for silence. The source was my ceremonial cup, the one I inherited from my father. All eyes turned to the cup where it sat on the small table beside him. The cup that Dakar's family had gifted to Rokan's father. Dakar's face went very still. "You're accusing my family of poisoning you?" "I'm stating facts. The cup your family gave my father contained toxic metal. My father drank from it for 10 years before he died. I've been drinking from it for 3. Elena examined it and identified the source of the poisoning. That's impossible. My family gave that cup in good faith. Did they? Rokan picked up the cup, held it where everyone could see. This cup has killed 2 chiefs. If I'd continued using it, it would have killed me too. And then you would have become Chief Dakar, with the council's support, with no heir to contest you. Convenient, isn't it? You're paranoid. The sickness has affected your mind. Has it? Or have I finally seen clearly for the first time in years? Rokan's voice hardened. You've been positioning yourself since I got sick. Every decision I struggled with, you were there to help. Every council session I was too weak to attend, you represented me. You've been playing chief for 3 years, waiting for me to die and make it official. That's not... And when Elena showed up and offered treatment, you wanted her executed immediately, before she could examine me, before she could discover what was actually wrong. Rokan took a step forward, still holding the cup. Why, Dakar? If you had nothing to hide, why were you so desperate to silence her? The silence that followed was absolute. Dakar's expression cycled through emotions: shock, anger, calculation. When he spoke again, his voice was ice. You have no proof, just the wild theories of a captive woman who will say anything to save herself. The proof is in my recovery. In 4 days of intensive treatment, I've regained more strength than I had in 3 years of traditional healing. Elena knew exactly what was wrong because she's trained in medicine we don't understand, and she's helping me recover. For now. What happens in a month, 6 months, when you relapse? I won't relapse because I know what was killing me, and I've removed it from my life. Rokan looked at the council. Dakar is right about one thing. I am weaker than I was, but I'm getting stronger every day, and I am still your chief. The question is whether you trust me to continue leading or whether you're ready to hand power to a man whose family has been slowly murdering your leaders for 20 years. It was a gamble, a massive, dangerous gamble. He was betting everything on the council's loyalty, on their suspicion of Dakar, on their willingness to believe the impossible. The elder spoke first. These are serious accusations, Chief Rokan. I know. If they're true, Dakar needs to answer for them. If they're false, I'm a paranoid fool unfit to lead. Either way, we need to know. Another council member spoke up. One of the women, sharp-eyed and skeptical. How can we verify any of this? We can't test the cup's toxicity ourselves. Elena can show you. She can demonstrate the tests, explain the symptoms, compare them to what I've experienced. Rokan kept his gaze steady. Or we can wait. See if I continue to improve now that I've stopped using the cup. See if Elena's treatments keep working. Give it the full 30 days she was promised. And if you're wrong, Dakar demanded, if this is all coincidence and delusion, then you'll get what you wanted. I'll be dead, and you'll be chief. The words hung there, brutal and honest. The council members looked at each other, then at Dakar, then at Rokan, reading the room, weighing options, calculating risks. Finally, the elder spoke. We will continue as originally decided. 30 days for the outsider to treat Chief Rokan. At the end of that period, we will assess his recovery and make our decision about leadership. He looked at Dakar. Your concerns are noted, but they are not yet proven. Dakar's jaw clenched. You're making a mistake. Perhaps, but it is our mistake to make. The session ended shortly after. Council members filed out, still murmuring among themselves. The camp's political landscape shifted in ways that would take days to fully understand. Rokan waited until most had left before allowing himself to sink back onto his seat. His legs were shaking, adrenaline wearing off to reveal the exhaustion underneath. Takota appeared at his side. That was risky. It worked. This time. What about next time? You've made an enemy of Dakar publicly now. He can't let that stand. I know. Elena approached, her expression worried. You shouldn't have pushed yourself that hard. You were supposed to appear strong, not exhaust yourself, proving a point. I needed to make it count. You needed to not collapse in front of the council. She was right, but Rokan didn't have the energy to admit it. He let them help him back to his lodge, let them settle him onto his sleeping platform, let the exhaustion finally take him under. As consciousness faded, his last coherent thought was that he'd won tonight. But winning one battle meant nothing if you couldn't survive the war. That night, while Rokan slept, Elena sat outside the lodge keeping watch. She'd volunteered for it. The guards Dakota had assigned were loyal, but she felt safer staying alert herself. Being in a camp full of people who'd wanted her dead a week ago didn't exactly promote restful sleep. The camp was quiet. Fires burned low. Most people had retired to their lodges. She was almost dozing when she heard footsteps. Her eyes snapped open. A figure approached through the darkness, tall, moving with purpose. Dakar. He stopped a few feet away, just at the edge of the firelight. His expression was unreadable. "You should be very careful," he said quietly. Elena's hand moved to the knife Dakota had given her. "Is that a threat?" "It's advice. You've made yourself valuable to Roken, which makes you dangerous to me. Dangerous things don't last long in uncertain times." "Uncertain times you're creating." "I'm not creating anything. I'm simply waiting for nature to take its course." He tilted his head. "How long do you think his recovery will last? Bodies break down, especially bodies as damaged as his." "He's getting better. For now. But you know as well as I do that damage like that doesn't fully heal. He'll have good days and bad days, and eventually the bad days will win." Elena wanted to argue, but part of her feared he was right. Lid poisoning caused permanent damage. Roken might improve, but completely recovering? That was less certain. "What do you want, Dakar?" "I want you to understand something. When Rokan fails, and he will fail, I'll be here, ready to lead. And when that happens, I'll remember who helped him, who gave him false hope, who convinced the council to trust an outsider over their own people." "You're the one who poisoned him." "I never said that." "You didn't have to. Your family gave him that cup." "My family gave a gift to honor a chief. What happened after isn't our responsibility." The casual denial was almost worse than an admission would have been. No guilt, no shame, just cold political calculation. "You're a monster," Elena said. Dakar smiled. "I'm a survivor. There's a difference." He turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. If you're smart, you'll take what you learned here and leave as soon as you can. Go back to your people. Forget about Roken and his tribe and all of this. Because staying means choosing a side in a war you can't win." He walked away before she could respond. Elena sat there in the darkness, heart pounding, mind racing. She should leave. She'd bought herself time with her medical knowledge, but that time would run out. And when it did, being the outsider who'd helped Roken wouldn't protect her. It would make her a target. She looked back at the lodge where Rokan slept. He'd trusted her, given her a chance when everyone else wanted her dead, believed her wild theories about poison and treatment. And yes, part of that was desperation. Part was political calculation. But part, she thought, was genuine. The smart move was to run. But Elena had never been particularly good at smart moves. She settled back into her watch, knife ready, and waited for morning. Morning came too soon, bringing with it a heat that promised to be worse than the day before. Elena had dozed off sometime before dawn, waking with a crick in her neck and the sun already climbing. The camp was stirring, women tending fires, children running between lodges, men preparing for the day's hunt. Normal life, as if last night's confrontation with Dakar hadn't happened. She stood, stretching out the stiffness, and checked on Roken. He was still asleep, breathing steady and deep. Better than the shallow, fever-pained breathing from 2 weeks ago. Real improvement, not just wishful thinking. "You look terrible." She turned to find Dakota approaching with a water skin and something wrapped in cloth. "Thanks. You really know how to compliment a woman." "I'm serious. When's the last time you slept properly?" Elena took the water skin, drank deeply. The water was cool, clean. "I sleep. Sitting outside on watch doesn't count." He handed her the cloth bundle, flatbread and dried meat. "Eat. You're no good to him if you collapse." She wanted to argue, but her stomach had other ideas. She tore into the food, suddenly aware of how hungry she was. "Dakar came by last night," she said between bites. Dakota's expression darkened. "What did he want?" "To threaten me. Politely. He suggested I leave before things get worse." "Are you going to?" The question caught her off guard. She'd been asking herself the same thing all night, and she still didn't have a good answer. "I don't know. Should I?" Dakota looked toward the lodge where his brother slept. "Honestly, probably. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. Dakar won't forget what happened at the council. He'll be looking for ways to undermine Rokan, and you're an easy target. So I should run. I'm saying you'd be smart to, but I'm also saying Rokan needs you. He met her eyes. Not just for the medical treatment. You gave him something he hasn't had in 3 years. Hoped that things could actually change. Elena finished the flatbread, wiping her hands on her already dirty clothes. She probably smelled terrible. When was the last time she'd properly bathed? Before the capture, definitely. I need to check his progress, she said, avoiding the bigger question. See how he handled last night's exertion. Inside the lodge, Rokan was awake. He'd managed to sit up on his own, which was progress, but his face was drawn with exhaustion. How do you feel? Elena asked, falling into the familiar routine of examination. Like I stood in front of the council and accused Dakar of murder. So terrible? Pretty much. He submitted to her poking and prodding, checking his pulse, examining his eyes, pressing on his abdomen to check for organ tenderness. Was it worth it? You survived. That's worth something. I meant politically. Elena sat back. I have no idea. I'm not exactly an expert on tribal politics. You're doing fine so far. You've stayed alive longer than most captives. Is that supposed to be encouraging? A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Take what you can get. They fell into silence. Elena prepared his morning treatment, the now familiar combination of herbs and minerals designed to help his body eliminate the accumulated lead. He drank it without complaint, which was also progress. He'd stopped making faces at the taste around day 5. Can I ask you something? Rokan said. You're the chief. You can do whatever you want. Why are you still here? Elena paused in cleaning up the treatment supplies. What do you mean? You could have run by now, multiple times. The guards are loyal to Dakota, not me, and half of them think you're helping me anyway. You could slip away at night, head back to wherever your people are. I told you, I got separated from my group. I don't even know which direction to go. You're smart enough to figure it out, and brave enough to try. His eyes were too sharp, seeing past her excuses. So why haven't you? Because leaving meant abandoning him to whatever Dakar had planned. Because despite everything, the capture, the threats, the impossible situation, she'd started to care whether he lived or died. Because somewhere in the past 2 weeks, this had stopped being about survival and started being about something else entirely. She couldn't say any of that. Medical curiosity, she said instead. I've never treated chronic lead poisoning before. It's interesting. I'm a case study? You're a patient who's actually listening to medical advice. Do you know how rare that is? He laughed, a real laugh, rusty but genuine. It transformed his face, made him look younger, made her remember that under the illness and the politics, he was just a man trying not to die. Fair enough, he said. Though I should warn you, the interesting part is probably over. From here it's just slow recovery and hoping nothing goes wrong. Things can always go wrong. That's what makes it interesting. The entrance flap opened and a young warrior stuck his head in. Chief Rokan, the hunting party is preparing to leave. They're asking if you want to address them. Rokan's face tightened. He hadn't been able to participate in a hunt in over a year. Having to address the hunters from his sickbed was just another reminder of everything he'd lost. Tell them I'll be there shortly. The warrior disappeared. Rokan started to stand, movements still careful but stronger than they'd been. You don't have to, Elena said. Yes, I do. If I want them to believe I'm recovering, I need to show myself. Can't hide in here forever. You just stood in front of the entire council last night. That should be enough. It's never enough. Leadership isn't one big moment, it's 1,000 small ones. He steadied himself, took a breath. How do I look? Tired, but alive. I'll take it. He made his way outside, Elena following a few steps behind. The hunting party had gathered near the edge of camp, 12 men, armed with bows and spears, preparing for a multi-day expedition into the plains. They stopped talking when Rokan approached. I won't keep you long, Rokan said, his voice carrying despite the weakness Elena knew he was fighting. Hunt well. Bring honor to your families and meat to your people. And when you return, we'll celebrate your success properly. It was simple, traditional. The kind of thing any chief would say. But coming from a man who'd barely been able to stand 2 weeks ago, it meant something more. The lead hunter, a grizzled man named Dakota, stepped forward. "We'll make you proud, Chief." "You always do." The hunters departed, their voices fading as they moved into the grasslands. Rokan watched them go, and Elena could see the longing in his expression, the desire to be out there with them, doing what he'd been trained to do since childhood. "Someday," she said quietly. "What?" "Someday you'll be able to hunt with them again, if you keep improving." "You don't know that." "No, but I can guess. The lead is clearing from your system. Your strength is coming back. Give it time." "Time." Rokan turned back toward his lodge. "That's all everyone tells me. Give it time. Be patient. Meanwhile, Dakar builds support, and I sit here hoping my body decides to cooperate." Elena caught his arm, stopping him. "You accused him of murder in front of the entire council. That's not sitting around hoping. That's fighting. With words. Not exactly the warrior way. Maybe that's what being chief means now. Fighting with words when you have to. Using weapons when you can." He looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. "You're wasted as a healer. You should be giving speeches." "I'm terrible at speeches." "I panic and forget what I'm saying." "You didn't seem panicked when you told the council I was being poisoned." "I was terrified. I just hid it well." That's what courage is. Being terrified and doing it anyway. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Elena couldn't quite name. Then Rokan pulled away, breaking the connection. "I should rest. Save my strength for whatever comes next." "Good idea." But neither of them moved. The sound of approaching footsteps made them both turn. A woman was walking toward them, middle-aged, carrying herself with quiet authority. Elena recognized her from the council sessions. "Chief Rokan," the woman said, inclining her head respectfully. "May I speak with you?" "Of course, Naira." Naira's eyes flicked to Elena, assessing. "Privately, if possible." Elena started to leave, but Rokan shook his head. "Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of Elena. She's my healer." "That's what I wanted to discuss." Naira moved closer, lowering her voice. "There are rumors circulating about the cup, about Dakar's family, about the poisoning." "Let them circulate." "You don't understand. People are afraid. If what you said is true, if Dakar's family has been killing chiefs, then who else might be in danger? What other gifts might be tainted? It's creating paranoia." Rokan's jaw set. "The truth creates fear. Should I have lied instead?" "I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to control the narrative. Right now, everyone's making up their own version of events. Some think you're paranoid. Some think Dakar is a murderer. Some think the outsider is manipulating you. What do you think?" Naira hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I think you believe what you're saying, and I think Elena's treatments are working, but I also think you've started a fire that could burn down more than Dakar's reputation. So what should I do?" "Prove it, not just to the council, but to everyone. Show them the cup, explain the poisoning, demonstrate the connection, make it impossible to deny." Elena spoke up before Rokan could respond. "That might not be wise." Both of them looked at her. "Why not?" Naira asked. "Because right now it's an accusation. Serious, but not proven. If Rokan presents evidence publicly and it's not conclusive enough, Dakar can dismiss it as paranoid fantasy. It'll make Rokan look weak, not vindicated. And if the evidence is conclusive, then Dakar becomes a confirmed murderer, which means execution or exile. His family loses everything. His supporters turn on him." Elena looked at Rokan. "You're talking about tearing apart a major family in the tribe. That has consequences beyond just Dakar." Naira nodded slowly. "She's right. Dakar's family is connected to 3 other major families through marriage. If you destroy them, you destabilize a quarter of the tribe's political structure." Rokan looked between them, frustration clear on his face. "So I do nothing? Let Dakar continue plotting while I worry about political stability?" "You wait," Elena said. "Keep recovering, build your strength. When the 30 days are up and you're clearly better, that's when you present evidence. Let your recovery speak for itself first. And in the meantime? In the meantime, we watch him. See what he does next." Naira seemed satisfied with this. It's a sound plan, though I'd suggest also working on rebuilding relationships with council members who've been drifting toward Dakar. Remind them why they chose you as chief in the first place. After she left, Rokan sank down onto a log near the lodge entrance, suddenly looking exhausted. I hate politics, he muttered. Most people do. I became chief because I was a good fighter, the strongest warrior, the best strategist in battle. Nobody mentioned I'd spend half my time managing egos and playing word games. Elena sat beside him. Welcome to leadership. You sound like you have experience. My father was a physician, ran a practice in Philadelphia. He used to say medicine was 10% healing and 90% managing patients who thought they knew better. She smiled at the memory. He'd have liked you. You actually listen. What happened to him? The question caught her off guard. She'd been so focused on surviving, on treating Rokan, that she'd barely thought about her own past. He died. Cholera outbreak 3 years ago. Spent himself trying to save others and caught it himself. She stared at her hands. I came west afterward. Couldn't stay in Philadelphia. Too many ghosts. I'm sorry. Don't be. He died doing what he loved. That's more than most people get. They sat in silence for a moment. Two people shaped by loss, trying to figure out what came next. Elena, Rokan said quietly, if you want to leave, I'll help you. Supplies, directions, even an escort part of the way. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. You gave me a chance when everyone else wanted me dead. That was strategy. I needed a healer. Was it? Just strategy? He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was careful. At first, yes. But things change. They do. Another silence, this one heavier with things neither of them was ready to say. The moment broke when Dakota appeared, his expression urgent. We have a problem. Rokan stood, shifting immediately into chief mode. What kind of problem? The hunting party sent a runner back. They found signs of another tribe in our territory. Fresh tracks, recent kills. They're asking for guidance. Which tribe? From the markings, probably the Kiowa. They've been pushing south for months. Rokan's face went hard. Send word to pull the hunting party back. We can't risk a confrontation while we're not at full strength. Dakar is saying the opposite. He wants to send warriors to drive them out, show strength. Of course he does. Because he's not the one who'd have to fight. Rokan started moving toward the central gathering area. Call an emergency council session, now. Elena watched him go, saw the way he moved with purpose despite the exhaustion. This was what he'd been trained for, making decisions under pressure, protecting his people. The illness had taken that from him. Getting it back, even partially, was clearly intoxicating. She started to follow, but Dakota caught her arm. Let him handle this one alone. Council politics are one thing, but military decisions are sacred. If you're there, it'll look like you're influencing him. I wasn't planning to say anything. Doesn't matter. Your presence is enough. He released her arm. Besides, you look dead on your feet. When's the last time you actually rested? I'm fine. You're exhausted. And if something happens to you, Rokan loses his healer and his best argument for why the council should keep trusting him. Dakota's expression softened slightly. Please sleep, eat. Take a few hours to be something other than his constant shadow. He was right, though Elena hated admitting it. She'd been running on adrenaline and stubbornness for 2 weeks. Eventually, that well would run dry. Fine, a few hours. But if anything changes, I'll wake you immediately. Elena made her way back to the lodge, crawled onto the sleeping platform Rokan had insisted she use while he took a mat on the floor, and was asleep within minutes. She dreamed of Philadelphia, of her father's practice, of the sick room where she'd learned to mix medicines and read symptoms. But the dream twisted, became the inside of a lodge instead of a proper clinic, and the patient wasn't a city merchant but a dying chief who looked at her with eyes that expected her to save him. She woke to voices arguing outside. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it came back. The lodge, the camp, the impossible situation she'd landed in. The voices grew louder, angry. Elena pushed herself up, every muscle protesting, and moved to the entrance. Carefully, she lifted the edge of the hide covering and peered out. Rokan and Dakar stood in the open area between lodges, facing off while a crowd gathered. The emergency council session must have ended badly. "Risking our security for your pride," Dakar was saying, his voice carrying across the camp. "I'm protecting our people from unnecessary conflict," Rokan shot back. "There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I stand, it looks like weakness. The Kiowa cross into our territory, and we run away? We assess the situation before we act. That's not running, it's strategy. It's cowardice dressed up as wisdom." Dakar turned to address the growing crowd. "Our chief is too sick to defend us, so he counsels retreat. He hides behind words while our enemies take what's ours." Rokan's hands clenched into fists. "Watch your next words carefully, Dakar." "Or what? You'll challenge me? You can barely stand for an hour without exhausting yourself." The crowd murmured, some in agreement, others in discomfort. This was getting dangerous fast. Elena started to move forward, then stopped. Dakota was right. Her being there would only make things worse. This was something Rokan had to handle himself. "You want to lead a war party into potentially hostile territory based on tracks and kills," Rokan said, his voice deadly calm. "Fine. You lead it. Take 10 warriors, go find these Kiowa hunters, and drive them out. I'll stay here and protect the camp." Dakar's smile was sharp. "Gladly, and when I return successful, we'll see who the council trusts to lead. If you return at all, I'll return. Unlike some, I don't hide from challenges." Rokan stepped closer, bringing them nearly face to face. "I'm giving you what you want, the chance to prove yourself. Don't waste it grandstanding." "I won't waste anything, especially not time arguing with a dying man." Dakar turned and walked away, already calling out names of warriors to join his party. The crowd began to disperse, buzzing with conversation. Rokan stood alone in the clearing, shoulders tight, breathing controlled. Elena could see the cost of the confrontation in the way he held himself. She slipped out of the lodge, moving to his side. "That was risky. I know. If he comes back successful, I know." Rokan's voice was strained. "But what choice did I have? If I'd forbidden it, I'd look weak. This way he gets to prove himself or fail on his own terms. And if he proves himself, then I deal with it when he returns." He turned to look at her. "Did you sleep?" "A few hours." "Good. You needed it." They walked back toward the lodge together, the camp slowly returning to normal around them. But Elena could feel the tension in the air, the sense that something had shifted. Inside, Rokan sat heavily on his sleeping mat, head in his hands. "I'm losing them," he said quietly. "Every day I can't be what they need. More of them drift toward Dakar." Elena knelt beside him. "You stood in front of them today, made a decision. That's leadership. Leadership is being strong enough that they don't question you in the first place. No one's that strong. Leadership is making hard choices when the easy ones won't work." He looked up at her. "You keep saying things like that. Things that make me think you've led people before." "I haven't. But I watched my father manage a practice full of doctors who all thought they were the smartest person in the room. Same principle, get them working together even when they hate each other." "How did he do it?" "Reminded them what they had in common, the goal they all shared." She met his eyes. "Your people all want the same thing, safety, prosperity, survival. They're just disagreeing on how to get there. And if Dakar's way works better than mine, then you adapt, learn from it, but you don't give up your principles just because someone else is louder." Rokan studied her face, something shifting in his expression. "When this is over, when the 30 days are up, and you're free to go, where will you go?" The question landed harder than it should have. Elena had been deliberately not thinking about that. "I don't know. Try to find my group, I guess, if they haven't moved on without me." "They probably have. It's been 2 weeks." "Probably. So you'd be on your own, a woman traveling alone in hostile territory." "I've survived this long." "Because you're under my protection, out there." He trailed off, the implication clear. Elena stood, suddenly needing distance. "Why are you asking this?" "Because I need to know if you're planning to stay." "Stay Here? Why not? You're a skilled healer. The tribe needs that, and you've already proven you can survive in this world. As a captive who got lucky, as someone who saw a problem, solved it, and made herself valuable. Rokan stood as well, moving closer. I'm not talking about keeping you prisoner. I'm talking about offering you a place. A real place. Elena's heart was pounding. Rokan, I know it's complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons it wouldn't work. But I'm asking anyway. Why? Because somewhere between accusing me of being poisoned and saving my life, you became more than just a healer. His voice was rough, honest. And I don't want to lose that when the 30 days are up. Elena opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. What could she say? That she'd been thinking the same thing? That the idea of leaving made her chest tight with something that felt dangerously like grief? That she'd started to care about him in ways that had nothing to do with medicine? Before she could figure out how to answer, shouts erupted from outside. They both rushed to the entrance. Warriors were running toward the western edge of camp, weapons drawn. Something was happening. Dakota appeared, breathing hard. Dakar's party, they're back, and they're not alone. Rokan and Elena followed him through the camp. A crowd had already gathered at the edge, and what Elena saw made her stomach drop. Dakar and his warriors had returned. They were dragging 3 people with them, 2 men and a woman, bound and bloodied. Kiowa, from their clothing and markings. Prisoners, someone in the crowd said. He caught them, another voice added. Drove them out of our territory. Dakar stood in the center, looking triumphant despite the dirt and blood on his clothes. We found them hunting on our land, took them without losing a single warrior. The crowd cheered. Rokan's face was stone. What do you plan to do with them? Rokan asked, his voice cutting through the celebration. Question them. Find out if there are more. Then decide their fate. Their fate is my decision to make. Of course, Chief. Dakar's smile was mocking. But I thought you might appreciate the help, since you've been so busy recovering. The prisoners were forced to their knees. The woman looked up, and Elena's breath caught. She was young, maybe 16, terror clear in her eyes. They're just hunters, Elena said before she could stop herself. Look at them. They're not warriors. Dakar turned to her. And you would know this how? By looking? By using common sense. They have hunting tools, not weapons. They're not dressed for battle. Maybe their tribe sent hunters because they thought we'd be less likely to notice. Or maybe they were just hunting and crossed a boundary they didn't know was there. Stay out of this, outsider. You don't understand our ways. I understand that killing prisoners who pose no threat is murder, not defense. The crowd went silent. Elena realized she'd gone too far, but she couldn't take it back now. Dakar's expression turned cold. Interesting. The woman who accused me of poisoning the chief now lectures me on murder. Tell me, how many of your people have killed ours? How many settlements have driven tribes from their land, broken treaties, slaughtered innocents? That's not... It's exactly the same. You want mercy for these prisoners because they look like victims to you. But every raid, every attack on our people started with someone making the same calculation. They're just hunters. They're just settlers. They're just defending their land. He wasn't wrong, and Elena hated that. The history between tribes and settlers was soaked in blood on both sides. Enough, Rokan said. The prisoners will be held until we determine if there are more Kiowa in the area. If they cooperate, they'll be released. If they don't, we'll decide then. That's weak, Dakar said flatly. They should be made an example of. I said enough. Rokan's voice carried authority despite his weakened state. The decision is made. For a moment, Elena thought Dakar would push back. Then he smiled, inclined his head in false respect, and stepped aside. As you command, Chief. But his eyes said something different. They said this isn't over. The prisoners were taken away. The crowd began to disperse, and Elena felt the tension coiling tighter. Dakar had returned successful, proven his strength, and made Rokan look weak by comparison. The political ground was shifting under their feet. That was a mistake, Dakota said quietly. Showing mercy to enemy prisoners while Dakar is riding high on victory. Would you rather I execute children to prove I'm strong? Rokan's voice was bitter. I'd rather you not give Dakar more ammunition against you. Then tell me what I should have done. Really, because I'm running out of good options. Dakota had no answer. They returned to the lodge in silence. Elena prepared Rokan's evening treatment, hands moving through the familiar motions while her mind raced. Everything was falling apart. Dakar was gaining support. Rokan was still too weak to truly challenge him, and she'd just painted a target on her own back by defending enemy prisoners. Elena. She looked up. Rokan was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I meant what I said earlier, about wanting you to stay. Rokan, now's not the time. There's never going to be a perfect time. Things are going to keep getting more complicated, not less. So I'm asking now while I still can. He took a breath. Stay. Help me rebuild. Not just my health, but everything. Elena's hand stilled on the treatment supplies. You're asking me to choose a side in a conflict I barely understand. I'm asking you to choose me. The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest. She thought about Philadelphia, about her father's practice, about the life she'd left behind. Then she thought about the past 2 weeks, the challenge of saving someone everyone had given up on, the satisfaction of watching him improve, the way he looked at her like she was something more than just a tool for survival. She thought about leaving, walking away from this camp and never looking back, and she knew, with sudden clarity, that she couldn't do it. Okay, she said quietly. Okay? I'll stay. For now, anyway. Until we figure out what comes next. Rokan's face transformed. Relief, hope, something deeper she wasn't ready to name. He stood, moved toward her, stopped just short of touching. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I might be making the worst decision of my life. If you are, at least you won't be alone in it. Elena laughed despite everything. That's either comforting or terrifying. Can it be both? They stood there, close enough to feel each other's warmth, the lodge suddenly feeling smaller and more intimate. Elena was acutely aware of every breath, every heartbeat. Then Rokan stepped back, breaking the moment. You should rest. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. Why? What happens tomorrow? Dakar's going to call another council session. He'll use his success to push for leadership changes, and I'm going to have to fight him with half the strength I need. You have more strength than you think. I hope you're right, because if I'm wrong about this, about us, about everything, a lot of people are going to pay the price. Elena wanted to tell him it would be okay, that they'd figure it out, but she'd never been good at comfortable lies. So instead she just said, then we'd better not be wrong. Outside, the camp settled into uneasy quiet. Fires burned low, guards changed shifts, and somewhere in the darkness, Dakar was planning his next move. The war wasn't over, it was just beginning. And Elena had just chosen which side she was on. The council session Rokan had predicted came 3 days later, and by then the camp had split into 2 distinct factions. Those who believed Dakar's successful raid proved his fitness to lead, and those who still held faith in their recovering chief. The division wasn't clean, families were torn, friendships strained. Elena could feel it in the way people moved through camp, avoiding certain groups, speaking in lowered voices. She was checking Rokan's progress when Dakota arrived with the news. It's happening tonight. Dakar's formally requesting the council declare you unfit and name him as chief. Rokan didn't look surprised. He'd been expecting this, preparing for it. How many votes does he have? 7, maybe 8. You need 10 to block him. So I need to convince at least 3 people to change their minds in the next few hours. Or convince them you're strong enough to still lead. Elena watched the exchange, her stomach knotting. 3 days of intensive treatment had brought Rokan further along, but he was still weak, still fighting a body that had been systematically poisoned for years. Asking him to project strength he didn't fully have yet felt like setting him up for failure. There might be another way, she said quietly. Both men looked at her. What if you don't just defend yourself? What if you go on the offensive? Rokan's eyes narrowed. Explain. Dakar's been positioning himself as the strong leader who takes action while you sit around recovering. But his raid, it was reckless. He brought back prisoners we can't really hold long term, potentially started a conflict with the Kiowa, and he did it all without proper reconnaissance. That's strategy talk, Dakota said. The warriors don't care about reconnaissance. They care that he drove out intruders. Then make them care. Point out that one successful raid doesn't make up for the risks he took. That real leadership isn't about proving yourself through violence. It's about protecting your people long term. Rokan was quiet for a moment, thinking. It could work, if I frame it right. It could also backfire, Dakota warned. Criticizing a successful raid makes you look bitter. Only if I do it wrong. Rokan stood, testing his balance. Better than yesterday, but still not what it should be. I need to talk to the prisoners. Find out what they know about Kiowa movements in the area. Why? Elena asked. Because if I can prove Dakar's raid was based on incomplete information, that there are more Kiowa nearby and his actions might have endangered us, then his success becomes reckless endangerment. It was smart, Elena had to admit. Turn Dakar's strength into a liability. I'll come with you, she said. No. If you're there, it undermines my authority. They need to see me handling this alone. He was right, but Elena hated it. Every time he walked away to deal with tribal politics or military decisions, she felt the distance between their worlds. She was tolerated here, useful even, but she'd never truly be one of them. After Rokan and Dakota left, Elena found herself with nothing to do. The treatment regimen was established, meals were being handled by others, and she wasn't welcome in most tribal discussions. She was in limbo, not quite a prisoner, not quite free, not quite belonging anywhere. She wandered toward the edge of camp where the Kiowa prisoners were being held in a makeshift enclosure. 2 guards stood watch, looking bored. They eyed her suspiciously as she approached. I want to check on the prisoners, Elena said. Make sure they're not injured. Chief's orders are no one sees them except him. I'm a healer. If they're wounded and we don't treat them, they might die. That's not going to help anyone. The guards exchanged glances. Finally, one shrugged. Make it quick. Elena ducked into the enclosure. The 3 Kiowa prisoners looked up, 2 men and the young woman Elena had noticed before. They were sitting against the far side, hands still bound, watching her with wary eyes. I'm not going to hurt you, Elena said, then realized they probably didn't understand her. She tried again with hand gestures, moving slowly so they could see she was unarmed. The older of the 2 men said something in a language Elena didn't recognize. His tone was questioning, but not aggressive. Do any of you speak English? She asked, not expecting an answer. Some. The young woman's voice was quiet, accented but clear. Little bit. Elena felt a surge of relief. I'm Elena. I'm here to check if you're hurt. Why you help us? Because leaving people injured is wrong, regardless of which side they're on. The woman translated for the 2 men. They discussed something in rapid Kiowa, then the woman turned back to Elena. You not from this tribe? No, It's complicated. Can I check your wounds? The woman nodded slowly. Elena moved closer, examining the cuts and bruises from their capture. Nothing life-threatening, but they'd been handled roughly. She had some basic supplies with her, not much, but enough to clean the worst of it. As she worked, the young woman watched her with sharp intelligence. Why they keep us? She asked. I think they're trying to figure out if there are more of your people nearby. There are. Hunting party, like us. We get separated, come back together in 2 days. Elena's hand stilled. You need to tell the chief that. If your people come looking for you and find you captured, it could start a war. Maybe war already started. Your warriors attack us. You were on their territory. Territory change, always changing. We not know we cross boundary. The woman's eyes were steady, honest. We just hunt, feed our families, same as you. Elena finished cleaning the cut on the woman's arm, sat back. What's your name? Ahnai. Ahnai, listen to me. The chief, Rokan, he's not a bad man, but there are people in this tribe who want conflict, who'll use any excuse to start fighting. If you cooperate, tell him what you know. He might release you. And if we not cooperate? Elena didn't have a good answer for that. The sound of approaching voices made her turn. Rokan and Dakota were coming toward the enclosure, along with 2 council members. Elena quickly stood, moving back from the prisoners. Rokan's expression when he saw her was unreadable. I thought I said I'd handle this. I was checking their injuries. Did I ask you to do that? The sharp tone stung more than it should have. Elena felt her face flush. No, but someone needed to. Step outside. Now! Elena walked out of the enclosure, anger and embarrassment warring in her chest. The guard smirked as she passed, clearly enjoying seeing the outsider get reprimanded. She waited near the entrance while Rokon questioned the prisoners. She couldn't hear most of the conversation, but she caught enough to know Anai was being cautious with information, answering only what was directly asked. When Rokon finally emerged, his face was tight with controlled frustration. They're not telling me everything, but I got enough. There's at least one more Kiowa hunting party in the area, maybe two. They were supposed to meet up tomorrow. So Dakar's raid might trigger a larger conflict. Exactly. He started walking back toward the main camp, and Elena fell into step beside him. They'd gone about 20 paces before he spoke again. Don't do that. Do what? Undermine my authority by going to the prisoners when I explicitly said I'd handle it. I wasn't trying to undermine you. I was trying to help. I know, but perception matters. If people see you acting independently, making decisions about prisoners, it looks like you're the one really in control. That's ridiculous. That's politics. Rokon stopped, turned to face her. I need you to understand something. Every time you step outside the role of healer, you make my position weaker. Not because I don't trust your judgment, but because it gives Dakar ammunition to claim I'm being manipulated by an outsider. Elena wanted to argue, but she could see the exhaustion in his face. The weight of trying to maintain authority while still recovering, while managing tribal divisions, while preparing for a council session that might strip away everything. I'm sorry, she said. I should have asked first. You should have trusted me to do my job. The words landed harder than he probably intended. Elena felt the distance between them widening again, the impossible gap between wanting to help and knowing when to step back. I'll wait at the lodge, she said quietly. She walked away before he could respond, fighting the urge to look back. The hours until the council session dragged. Elena prepared Rokon's treatment, laid out his ceremonial clothes, did everything she could think of to be useful without overstepping. When Rokon finally returned to change, they moved around each other in careful silence. How do you feel? She asked, falling back on the familiar safety of medical questions. Nervous, angry, tired. He pulled on the ceremonial shirt, fingers fumbling slightly with the ties. Terrified. The honesty surprised her. You'll do fine. You don't know that. I know you're stronger than you were 3 weeks ago. I know you're smart enough to turn Dakar's success against him, and I know you actually care about your people, not just about power. Rokon looked at her, something softening in his expression. I'm sorry for snapping at you earlier. You weren't wrong. I wasn't entirely right either. He finished with the ties, let his hands drop. This would be easier if I knew what I was doing, if I had any idea whether I'm making the right choices. Welcome to being human. None of us know if we're making the right choices. We just do our best and hope. Is that what you're doing? Your best? Elena met his eyes. Every day. The moment stretched between them, charged with all the things they hadn't said. Then Dakota appeared at the entrance, breaking the spell. It's time. The council had gathered in full this time. Not just the core members, but representatives from every major family. The clearing was packed with people, firelight casting dancing shadows across serious faces. Elena stayed back, watching from the edge as Rokon took his place. Dakar stood across from him, looking confident and rested. The contrast was stark. Rokon still carried the signs of his illness despite the improvements, still moved with more care than a chief in his prime should need. The elder moderator called the session to order. We gather to discuss leadership. Dakar Kesh has requested the council consider a change in authority. Dakar? Dakar stepped forward, and Elena had to admire his skill. He didn't attack Rokon directly, didn't make accusations. Instead, he spoke about duty, about the tribe's needs, about how leadership required full strength and clear judgment. Chief Rokon has served us well for many years, but the past 3 years have shown us the cost of weakened leadership. We've been vulnerable, uncertain, divided. Dakar's voice carried across the gathering. My recent actions weren't about glory, they were about protecting our people when our chief couldn't. That's what leadership requires, the ability to act when action is needed. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. I'm not asking to replace Chief Roken permanently. I'm asking to serve as acting chief until he is fully recovered. If he recovers. He can keep his title, his honor, his place in our history. But the daily decisions, the protection of our people, that should fall to someone who can bear the weight. It was a masterful speech, respectful enough to avoid seeming power-hungry, practical enough to appeal to genuine concerns, and devastating in its implications. Rokan stood. Elena could see the effort it cost him, the way he had to consciously project strength he was still rebuilding. Dakar speaks of protecting our people through action, but what action did he take? He led a raid against 3 hunters who crossed into our territory, probably by accident. He captured them, brought them back, and created a situation where their hunting party will come looking for them. I drove out intruders, Dakar countered. You escalated a minor boundary dispute into a potential conflict. I've questioned the prisoners. There are at least 2 more Kiowa hunting parties in the area. They're due to meet up with the 3 you captured. When they don't arrive, those parties will come searching. And when they find their people held prisoner, what do you think happens? The crowd shifted, uncertain now. You're using information from enemy prisoners to undermine a successful raid? Dakar's voice rose. They'll say anything to sow discord. They'll tell the truth when they have no reason to lie. One of them speaks English. She told the truth because she's afraid that this situation will spiral into violence that gets her people killed. Since when do we trust the words of enemies? Since when do we ignore strategic realities because we're too proud to admit we made a mistake? Roken took a step forward, his voice hardening. You wanted to prove you could lead through action. Fine. You proved you can capture 3 unprepared hunters. Congratulations. Now deal with the consequences. More Kiowa in our territory, probably looking for conflict, all because you needed to demonstrate strength. Dakar's face flushed with anger. I protected our boundaries. You risked our security for personal glory. There's a difference. And what would you have done? Talked to them? Offered them tea and friendship? I would have sent scouts to assess the full situation before committing to action. I would have determined if they were a genuine threat or just hunters who crossed a line they didn't know was there. And if they needed to be driven out, I would have done it without creating prisoners that tie our hands. The logic was sound, but Elena could see it wasn't enough. Half the crowd was nodding along, but the other half still looked skeptical. They wanted to believe Roken, but belief required faith in his strength. You speak well, Dakar said, but words won't protect us when the Kiowa return. Action will, strength will, and right now I'm the only one who has both. Are you? Roken's voice dropped, became dangerous. Because from where I stand, you're the one who created this problem, which means you're the one who needs to solve it. I will solve it. When they come, I'll drive them out. Again. No, you'll negotiate. You'll release the prisoners with an explanation that this was a misunderstanding. You'll de-escalate before this becomes a blood feud. Dakar laughed. Release them? Show weakness? Show wisdom. Prove you can be more than just a warrior looking for fights. I won't. You will. Because I'm still chief, and I'm giving you a direct order. Rokan's voice cut through the night air. Release the prisoners at dawn. Send them back with supplies and an escort to the boundary. Make it clear this was a territorial misunderstanding, nothing more. The crowd went silent. This was the moment. Would Rokan's authority hold, or would Dakar openly defy him? Dakar's jaw worked, fury clear in every line of his body. You're making a mistake. Then it's my mistake to make. Release them. For a long, tense moment, Elena thought Dakar would refuse, thought everything would explode right there in front of the entire tribe. Then Dakar inclined his head in a gesture that was technically respectful, but dripped with contempt. As you command, Chief. He turned and walked away, several warriors following him. The crowd began to disperse, voices rising in debate. Some were clearly angry at Rokan's decision, others thoughtful, most just confused. Roken stood alone in the clearing as people filtered away, and Elena could see him shaking. Whether from exhaustion, adrenaline, or the sheer effort of maintaining control, she wasn't sure. She moved to his side as the clearing emptied. That was risky. I know. If releasing the prisoners goes wrong, I know. He turned to look at her, eyes hollow with fatigue. But it was the right call, wasn't it? I think so, but I'm not the one who has to live with the consequences. Neither am I. My people do. He started walking back toward his lodge, moving carefully. That's what leadership is, making the best choice you can and hoping it doesn't destroy everything. They reached the lodge and Rokon collapsed onto his sleeping platform, all pretense of strength abandoning him. Elena could see the tremor in his hands, the way his breathing had gone shallow. You pushed too hard tonight, she said, moving into healer mode. Your body's not ready for that kind of stress. Didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. Not for chiefs. He closed his eyes. Did I do the right thing? Really? Elena prepared a mixture to help with the tremors, something to settle his overworked system. You chose de-escalation over conflict. You chose long-term stability over short-term victory. Whether that's right depends on what happens next. That's not reassuring. It's honest. He took the medicine she offered, drank without complaint. Stay. Tonight. I don't want to be alone. Elena hesitated. The request was innocent enough. He was exhausted, stressed, needing comfort, but there was an intimacy to it that made her nervous. Rokon, please, just stay. She settled onto the ground near his platform, close enough to monitor him but maintaining appropriate distance. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the camp settle into uneasy quiet outside. Can I ask you something? Rokon said, eyes still closed. You're the chief. You can ask anything. Do you regret it? Staying? Elena thought about the past 3 weeks. The fear, the uncertainty, the constant pressure of being an outsider in a world that had every reason to reject her, but also the satisfaction of watching Rokon improve, the challenge of navigating impossible situations, the feeling that what she was doing actually mattered. Ask me again when we know if those prisoners make it home safely, she said. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. Rokon opened his eyes, turned his head to look at her. What if they don't? What if Dakar's right, and I just made a catastrophic mistake? Then we deal with it together. Why? You could leave. Tomorrow, when the prisoners are released, you could go with them. They'd help you find your way to the nearest settlement. Elena hadn't thought of that. The prisoners could be her ticket out, her escape from this impossible situation. I told you I'd stay, she said quietly. That was before I potentially started a war by showing mercy to our enemies. Rokon, stop. You made the right tactical decision based on the information you had. Whether it works out or not doesn't change that it was the right choice in the moment. You sound very certain for someone who knows nothing about tribal warfare. I know about people, and I know that cycles of violence have to be broken somewhere. Maybe this is that somewhere. He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. You really believe that? I'm trying to. The next morning came too fast. Elena woke to find Rokon already up, preparing for the prisoner release. He moved stiffly, body protesting yesterday's exertions, but his jaw was set with determination. You should rest more, Elena said. Can't. Need to oversee this personally. Make sure Dakar doesn't sabotage it. You don't trust him to follow orders? I don't trust him, period. They made their way to the prisoner enclosure together. A small crowd had gathered, some curious, some supportive, some clearly angry at the decision. Dakar was already there, looking like he'd swallowed something bitter. The 3 Kiowa prisoners were brought out, their bonds cut. They rubbed their wrists, looking uncertain and afraid. Rokon addressed them directly, speaking slowly. You're free to go. We're providing you with supplies and an escort to our boundary. This was a misunderstanding. Return to your people and tell them we don't seek conflict. Anai, the young woman who spoke English, translated for the 2 men. They looked shocked, disbelieving. We go? Just go? Anai asked. Yes, but tell your hunting parties to stay clear of this area. We've marked our boundaries. Respect them. We will. We tell them. Anai looked at Elena, recognition flickering in her eyes. Thank you. You speak truth. He is not bad man. Elena felt something warm settle in her chest, despite everything. The prisoners were given food, water, and a basic weapon for protection, not enough to be threatening, but enough to survive. 4 warriors would escort them to the boundary and ensure they weren't followed. As the group prepared to leave, Dakar moved closer to Rokan. "This is a mistake," he said, voice low enough that only Rokan and Elena could hear. "You're showing weakness. When their hunting parties come looking, they won't see mercy. They'll see opportunity. Then we'll deal with it. Prepared this time, not caught off guard. You can't prepare for everything. Sometimes you just need to be strong enough to handle whatever comes." "Is that why you took the prisoners in the first place? To prove your strength?" Dakar's eyes narrowed. "I did what needed to be done. What you couldn't. You did what fed your ego. There's a difference." For a moment, Elena thought Dakar might strike him. The violence was right there, barely contained beneath the surface. Then Dakar smiled, cold and empty. "We'll see who was right. When the Kiowa come back, we'll see." He walked away and Elena released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "That went well," she muttered. "About as well as expected." Rokan watched the prisoner escort disappear into the grasslands. "Now we wait." The waiting was terrible. 3 days passed with no sign of the Kiowa hunting party. The camp was on edge, warriors taking extra watch shifts, everyone jumping at shadows. Rokan's decision was being debated constantly, some praising his wisdom, others calling it weakness. Elena kept to her routine, treating Rokan, managing his recovery, trying to stay out of tribal politics. But she could feel the tension mounting like a storm about to break. On the 4th day, scouts came running back with news. The Kiowa hunting party had been spotted. They were approaching the camp, armed and ready for conflict. The camp exploded into controlled chaos. Warriors grabbed weapons, women and children were moved to the center, defensive positions were established. Rokan stood in the middle of it all, his face set with grim determination. "They're coming for their people," someone shouted. "They think we killed them." "Then we show them we didn't," Rokan said. "We meet them at the boundary. Show we mean no harm." "That's suicide," Dakar appeared, already armed. "They're coming ready for war. We should be too." "We are. But we're also ready for peace." Rokan looked at his warriors. "I need volunteers. Men who can stand their ground but won't strike first. Men who can project strength without seeking violence." Silence. Then slowly, warriors began stepping forward. Not all of them, maybe half. The others stayed back, clearly siding with Dakar's approach. Elena watched the tribe literally splitting in front of her, allegiances becoming visible and undeniable. "I'm coming with you," she said to Rokan. "No. You're staying here where it's safe. I speak the same language as one of the prisoners we released. I can help translate, help explain what happened. Elena, you're about to walk into a potential battle armed with good intentions and hope. Let me help tip the odds in your favor." Rokan looked like he wanted to argue further. Then he nodded once, sharp and reluctant. "Stay behind me. If fighting starts, you run. Understand?" "I understand." They rode out to meet the Kiowa. Rokan, Elena, Dakota, and 12 warriors who'd volunteered. The other half of the tribe's fighters stayed back with Dakar, either for camp defense or because they disagreed with the approach. The Kiowa party appeared as they crested a rise. 15 warriors, fully armed, moving with the coordination of experienced fighters. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. The two groups stopped about 50 yards apart, sizing each other up. Then one of the Kiowa warriors raised his hand, not in greeting, but in recognition. He called out something in his language, voice carrying across the distance. From behind him, 3 figures emerged, the prisoners they'd released. Ahnai stepped forward, speaking rapidly to what was clearly their war leader. She gestured at Rokan, at Elena, explaining. The war leader listened, face unreadable. The silence stretched unbearably. Elena could feel the tension in the warriors around her, hands on weapons, ready to fight or flee. Finally, the Kiowa war leader spoke. His voice was deep, authoritative. Ahnai translated, her English accented but clear enough to carry. He says you show honor. You release prisoners, give supplies, send them home with respect. This is not expected. Rokan sat straighter on his horse. Tell him we don't seek conflict with the Kiowa. The The capture was a misunderstanding. We've marked our boundaries clearly now. We ask only that they be respected. Anai translated. The war leader considered, then responded. He asked why you show mercy when you could have killed. Why risk looking weak? Rokan glanced at Elena, something passing between them. Then he looked back at the Kiowa leader. Because strength isn't always about killing. Sometimes it's about choosing a better path, even when the violent one is easier. The translation took longer this time, Eichnai clearly struggling with the concept. But when she finished, the war leader's expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but something close to respect. He spoke again, and this time his tone had changed. He says his people will respect your boundaries. This misunderstanding is ended. But he also says, Anai hesitated. He says there are other tribes moving south, pushed by white settlement. The land grows crowded. Peace is valuable, but it will not last forever. Tell him we understand, and that when the time comes, we'll face whatever happens with clear eyes. The final exchange was brief. The Kiowa war leader inclined his head, not submission, but acknowledgement between equals, and turned his party back toward their own territory. Elena didn't realize she'd been holding her breath until they disappeared over the ridge. Around her, the warriors began to relax, tension draining away. It worked, Dakota said, sounding almost surprised. Your gamble actually worked. Rokan didn't respond immediately. His eyes were tracking where the Kiowa had vanished, his expression troubled. For now, he said quietly. But did you hear what he said? Other tribes moving south, settlement pressure increasing. This peace we just bought? It's temporary at best. All peace is temporary, Elena said. That doesn't make it worthless. They rode back to camp, and Elena could see the moment word spread about what had happened. People came out of their lodges, watching the returning party, reading the lack of blood and battle damage. Dakar was waiting near the camp edge, his face unreadable. They're gone? He asked. They're gone. Satisfied. They thanked us for releasing their people and promised to respect our boundaries. How generous of them. And when they come back with more warriors, claiming more land, then we deal with it. But we don't create enemies where none need to exist. You're naive. You think showing mercy makes you strong, but it just makes you a target. Dakar stepped closer, voice dropping. This isn't over, Rokan. One peaceful encounter doesn't prove your way works. And one successful raid doesn't prove yours does, but here we both are. Dakar's eyes shifted to Elena, cold and calculating. You've got the outsider speaking for you now, making your arguments? Elena helped translate, that's all. Sure it is, just like she just helped identify the poison, just helped with your treatment, just helped convince the council to trust you. He smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. How long before everyone realizes she's the one really making decisions? That's enough. Rokan's voice carried authority despite his exhaustion. You've made your position clear. Now step back. For a heartbeat, Elena thought Dakar would push further. Then he shrugged, turned away, and walked toward the group of warriors who'd stayed with him. The camp was splitting. Not violently, not openly, but undeniably. Those who believed in Rokan's approach and those who followed Dakar's. The council session had revealed it, the prisoner situation had confirmed it, and now everyone could see it. That night, after the evening meal and the inevitable council debriefing, Elena found herself alone with Rokan in his lodge. He sat on his sleeping platform, head in his hands, the weight of everything finally catching up. You should be celebrating, Elena said. You were right, it worked. This time. What about next time? Or the time after that? He looked up, and she could see the fear beneath the exhaustion. Dakar's right about one thing. I can't protect everyone through negotiation and wisdom. Eventually something's going to require violence, and when that happens, I need to be strong enough to lead that fight. You're getting stronger every day. Not fast enough. Did you see how many warriors stayed back with Dakar? Half the fighting force. If it came to actual conflict, I'm not sure who they'd follow. Elena sat beside him, close enough to feel his warmth. Then you need to keep proving that your way works. Keep showing them that strength isn't just about fighting. And if I'm wrong? If this peace with the Kiowa falls apart and people die because I chose mercy over security, then you'll have to live with that. just like Dakar has to live with the risks his choices create. She put her hand on his arm, felt the muscle tension beneath her fingers. There's no perfect answer here, Rokan. You're going to make mistakes. So is he. The difference is what you're trying to build. He looked at her hand on his arm, then at her face. Something in his expression made her breath catch. Elena. The entrance flap ripped open. Dakota burst in, his face pale. It's happened. Dakar's made his move. Rokan was on his feet instantly, exhaustion forgotten. What move? He's called a gathering tonight without council approval. He's addressing the tribe directly, calling for a leadership vote. He can't do that. He's doing it. He's got his supporters gathered, he's making speeches about strength and weakness, and he's forcing everyone to choose sides. Rokan grabbed his ceremonial robe, fingers fumbling with the ties. Elena helped him, her own hands shaking. This is it, Rokan said. Everything's been leading to this. They rushed out of the lodge toward the gathering space. A massive crowd had assembled, larger than any council session Elena had seen. Dakar stood in the center, firelight painting him in shades of gold and shadow, his voice carrying across the crowd. Can't lead us because he's too weak, too compromised, too dependent on outsiders to make his decisions. His eyes found Elena in the crowd. We've watched him hand control to a woman who's only been here 3 weeks. A white woman who knows nothing of our ways, our needs, our survival. The crowd murmured, some in agreement, some in discomfort. Rokan pushed through to the center. This gathering is illegal. Council sessions require proper notice. I'm not calling a council session. I'm addressing my people. That's every warrior's right. Your people? They're my people. I'm their chief. Are you? When's the last time you led a hunt, fought in a raid, protected the camp without needing your outsider healer to hold your hand? Rokan's jaw clenched. I've been sick. I'm recovering. You've been weak. There's a difference. Dakar addressed the crowd again. I'm not asking for a coup. I'm asking for honesty. I'm asking everyone here to look at their chief and ask themselves, is this the man who can protect us? Is this the man who can lead us into an uncertain future? Silence. Painful, heavy silence. Then a voice called out from the crowd. What about the Kiowa? He handled that without bloodshed. This time, Dakar shot back. What about next time? What about when they come back with demands? What about when white settlers push further into our lands? Will he negotiate them away too? More voices joined in, arguing both sides. The gathering was devolving into chaos, the tribe's divisions becoming impossible to ignore. Elena watched it all, feeling helpless. This wasn't something medicine could fix. This was politics, power, the raw struggle of people trying to survive in a changing world. Rokan raised his hand for silence. It took several attempts before the crowd quieted enough for him to speak. Dakar asks if I can protect you. It's a fair question. The answer is, I don't know. I've been sick for 3 years. I'm still recovering. My body isn't what it was. Dakar smiled, smelling victory. But, Rokan continued, his voice strengthening, leadership isn't just about physical strength. It's about judgment, about choosing the right path even when the wrong one is easier, about building something that lasts instead of something that burns bright and dies fast. Pretty words, Dakar said, but words don't protect anyone when enemies attack. Neither does reckless violence. You want to talk about the Kiowa? Fine. Your raid captured 3 hunters and almost started a war. My negotiation sent them home and bought us peace. Which approach actually protected this tribe? Temporary peace. All peace is temporary, but it gives us time. Time to prepare. Time to strengthen. Time to choose our battles instead of having them chosen for us. The crowd was listening now, really listening. You say I'm weak, Rokan said. Maybe you're right, but I'm getting stronger every day, and I'm still your chief, still the one you chose to lead you. So I'm asking, do you trust me to keep doing that? Or are you ready to throw away everything we've built because I got sick? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Then someone in the crowd spoke up. I trust him. Another voice. He's kept us safe for 10 years. 3 years sick doesn't erase that. More voices joining in, supporting Rokan, but not all of them. Not even most. The tribe was genuinely split, and no speech was going to fix that. Dakar saw it too. This isn't over. We'll let the people decide, properly. A full council vote on leadership, 3 days from now. Fine, Rokan said. 3 days. The gathering dispersed slowly, people breaking into clusters to debate what they'd heard. Elena stayed close to Rokan as they made their way back to his lodge, watching for threats in every shadow. Inside, Rokan collapsed onto his sleeping platform, all his remaining strength deserting him at once. 3 days, he said hoarsely. 3 days to convince half the tribe I'm worth following. Elena knelt beside him, checking his pulse. Elevated. Stress was undoing some of the progress they'd made. You need to rest. You've pushed too hard tonight. I don't have time to rest. I have 3 days to save my leadership. You have 3 days to prove you're recovering, which means showing them you're strong enough to lead, which means taking care of yourself. She prepared his evening treatment, hands moving through the familiar motions. Take this. Sleep. Tomorrow we figure out strategy. He took the medicine but didn't lie down. Instead, he caught her hand, held it. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For staying. For believing this could work. For... He paused, searching for words. For seeing me as more than just a dying man. Elena's throat tightened. You were never just a dying man. You were a leader fighting to survive. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. They stayed like that for a long moment, hands linked, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. Then Rokan released her, lay back, closed his eyes. 3 days, he whispered. 3 days, Elena echoed. She sat beside him as he fell into exhausted sleep, watching the rise and fall of his chest, thinking about everything that had happened. The capture, the poisoning, the treatment, the politics, the impossible situation they'd somehow navigated this far. 3 days until the council vote. 3 days until the tribe decided whether to keep their recovering chief or replace him with a man who promised strength but delivered violence. 3 days to determine not just Rokan's fate, but hers as well. Outside, the camp settled into uneasy quiet. But Elena could feel the tension humming beneath the surface, could sense the storm gathering just beyond the horizon. This wasn't over. It was barely beginning. And somewhere in the darkness, Dakar was planning his next move. Elena woke before dawn to the sound of urgent voices. She sat up, disoriented, reaching instinctively for Rokan's sleeping platform. Empty. Her heart kicked into a faster rhythm as she scrambled up, pulling on her worn boots. Outside, a small crowd had gathered near the river. She pushed through, fear clawing at her throat, until she saw him. Rokan was standing waist-deep in the water, talking to Dakota on the bank. Not drowning, not collapsed, just standing there in the pre-dawn gray, water streaming off his shoulders. What's happening? Elena demanded. Dakota turned, his expression caught between concern and something that might have been hope. He's been out here for an hour, bathing, then standing, testing his strength. Elena waded in without thinking, the cold water shocking against her legs. Are you insane? You need to be resting, not freezing yourself half to death. Rokan turned to face her, and what she saw stopped her mid-stride. His eyes were clear, focused, not fevered or clouded with exhaustion, clear. I needed to know, he said, whether I could actually do this, stand in cold water, hold my ground, function like a leader instead of an invalid. And? I'm still standing. It wasn't much, but it was something. Elena felt the knot in her chest loosen fractionally. Get out of there before you undo all the progress we've made, she said, but there was no heat in it. He came out of the water slowly, deliberately, showing everyone watching that he could, that his legs held, that whatever strength he'd lost was coming back. Back in the lodge, Elena checked him over with more care than usual. His skin was cold, but his color was good, pulse steady. The gray tint that had haunted his complexion for weeks was almost gone. You're doing better, she admitted, but you're not invincible. 3 days isn't enough time to... It's the time I have. Rokan pulled on dry clothes, movement still careful but more confident than they'd been. Dakar's not going to wait for me to be at full strength, so I need to work with what I've got. Which is what exactly? You can stand in cold water. That's not the same as leading warriors or surviving a political battle. It's proof I'm recovering. That's what matters. Dakota entered carrying food and news, neither of which looked particularly good. Dakar's been making rounds since before dawn, visiting families, talking to warriors, building support. How many has he got? Roken asked. Hard to say. Maybe 40% firmly on his side. Another 20% leaning that way. The rest are either with you or undecided. So I need to convince 60% to trust me in 3 days, while still recovering from 3 years of poisoning. When you put it that way, it sounds impossible, Elena muttered. It probably is. Rokan ate mechanically, clearly thinking through options. But impossible just means it hasn't been done yet. The first day was a blur of meetings. Rokan visited every family cluster, every warrior group, every council member who'd listen. Elena stayed back, taking Dakota's advice about not appearing to control him. But she could see the toll it took, the way Rokan's hands shook by afternoon, the lines of exhaustion deepening around his eyes. She was preparing his evening treatment when he finally returned, looking like he'd been trampled by horses. How'd it go? She asked, already knowing the answer from his face. Mixed. Some people are with me, some aren't. Most are waiting to see what happens at the vote. He sank onto his sleeping platform. Naira told me something interesting, though. What? Dakar's been talking about marriage. Elena's hands stilled. What? Not for himself, for me. Rokan's expression was unreadable. Several council members suggested that if I took a wife, showed I was thinking about succession and the future, it might strengthen my position. That's strategic, I guess. Dakar suggested you. The words hit like cold water. Elena set down the herbs she'd been mixing, turned to face him fully. What? He suggested that if I'm so dependent on you anyway, I should just marry you, make you officially part of the tribe, show that I'm committed to rebuilding. Rokan's jaw tightened. He said it would prove you're not manipulating me, that our connection is genuine. That's insane. We barely know each other. I've been here less than a month. Elena stopped, scrambling for coherent thoughts. I'm white. I'm an outsider. Half the tribe already thinks I'm manipulating you, and marriage would just confirm it. I know. He looked at her, really looked at her, and Elena felt something shift in the air between them. But what if he's right? Not about the manipulation part, about making you officially part of this, about showing that I'm not just surviving, I'm building something. Rokan, you can't be serious. Why not? You've saved my life. You've stood by me through everything. You've proven yourself more loyal than people who've been here their whole lives. His voice dropped, became rougher. And somewhere along the way, this stopped being just about survival for me. It became about you. Elena's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it. You're talking about a political marriage, a strategic move. I'm talking about both. Can't it be both? I don't know. Can it? She turned away, needing distance to think. This is happening too fast. A month ago, I was a captive expecting to die. Now you're talking about marriage like it's a reasonable next step. Nothing about this situation is reasonable, but that doesn't make it wrong. Elena pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to organize her spinning thoughts. What if the vote goes against you anyway? What if marrying me just proves Dakar's point, that you're too influenced by outsiders to lead effectively? Then I'll have married someone who matters to me and the rest can sort itself out. That's not a plan. That's desperation. Maybe. Rokan stood, moved closer, but didn't touch her. But I'm asking anyway. Not because it's strategic, because I want to. Elena dropped her hands, met his eyes. You want to marry a woman you've known for 3 weeks? Who you met because she was dragged into your camp as a prisoner? When you put it that way, it sounds insane. Because it is insane. Probably. He smiled slightly, and it transformed his face. But I've been dying for 3 years. Insane is starting to look pretty reasonable. Before Elena could respond, shouts erupted outside. They both turned toward the entrance as Dakota burst in, his face pale. We've got a problem. A big one. Rokan was already moving. What kind of problem? Dakar just announced he's calling a challenge. Traditional combat, him against you. Winner leads the tribe. The words dropped like stones into still water, ripples spreading out in devastating patterns. He can't do that, Elena said. Rokan's still recovering. It's not a fair fight. He's claiming that if Rokan can't defend his position physically, he's not fit to hold it. Dakota looked at his brother. The council's debating whether to allow it, but half of them think it's the cleanest way to settle this. Rokan's face had gone carefully blank. When? Tomorrow at sunset, if you accept the challenge. And if I don't? Then you forfeit your position. Dakar becomes chief by default. Elena felt sick. This was it. Dakar's real move. Force Rokan into a fight he couldn't win, or force him to surrender without one. Either way, Dakar took power. You can't fight him, Elena said flatly. Your body isn't ready. You've made progress, but you're not strong enough for combat. I don't have a choice. There's always a choice. Refuse the challenge. Call it what it is. An illegal power grab. Which makes me look weak and afraid. I lose either way. Rokan turned to Dakota. What are the terms? Traditional challenge rules. No weapons. First to yield or die. Die? Elena's voice came out sharp. This isn't about leadership, it's about murder. It's about dominance, Rokan corrected quietly. Dakar wants to prove he's stronger. If I yield, he's shown the tribe I'm not fit. If I win, he stopped. You won't win, Elena said. Not in your current condition. He's been training while you've been recovering from poison. This isn't a fair contest. Life isn't fair. Stop being philosophical and be practical. You'll die out there. Rokan looked at her, and the acceptance in his eyes made her chest ache. Maybe. But what's the alternative? Surrender without fighting? Watch him take everything while I hide behind excuses about still being sick? It's not an excuse. It's reality. The tribe doesn't care about reality. They care about strength. He turned back to Dakota. Tell the council I accept. Tomorrow at sunset. Dakota left to deliver the message, and Elena rounded on Rokan. This is suicide. This is leadership. It's stupid pride getting you killed. Then what should I do? His voice rose, frustration finally breaking through. Tell me, Elena, what's the right move here? Because I don't see one. Refuse the challenge. Make it a council vote like originally planned. At least there you're fighting with words, not fists. Dakar controls too much of the council. I'll lose the vote. You don't know that. I do know it. I've been counting support for 3 days. I'm 10 votes short. He moved to the entrance, stared out at the camp. The challenge gives me a chance. Small, but real. If I can last long enough, show I'm not completely broken, maybe that's enough. Elena wanted to argue further, but the set of his shoulders told her it was pointless. He'd made his decision. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay on her sleeping platform listening to Rokan's breathing, thinking about everything that had happened. The poisoned cup, the slow recovery, the political maneuvering, and now this, a fight he couldn't win against a man who wanted him dead. She thought about leaving, just slipping out in the darkness, heading back to whatever remained of her old life. She'd done what she promised, identified the poison, started treatment, bought him time. She didn't owe him suicide by association, but even as the thought formed, she knew she wouldn't do it. Somewhere in the past month, this had stopped being about obligation and started being about something else, something she wasn't ready to name but couldn't deny. She was still awake when Rokan spoke into the darkness. You're thinking too loud. Elena turned her head. He was awake too, staring at the ceiling. I'm thinking about how stupid this is, she said. Join the club. Then why are you doing it? Rokan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. Because I'm tired of being weak. Tired of making decisions based on what my broken body can handle instead of what's right. This challenge, it's terrible timing, probably going to end badly, but at least it's something I'm choosing, not something being forced on me by poison or politics. Choosing to die isn't really a choice. Neither is choosing to live as someone I don't recognize anymore. Elena sat up, moved to sit beside his sleeping platform in the darkness. You're not weak. You're recovering from 3 years of systematic poisoning. That's not the same thing.
To the tribe it is. To Dakar it is. Hell, sometimes to me it is.
He turned his head to look at her. I know what you're going to say, that I'm being harder on myself than necessary. That recovery takes time, but time is something I don't have. So you'd rather die fighting than live adapting. I'd rather die trying to be who I'm supposed to be than live as a shadow of it. Elena wanted to shake him, wanted to scream that he was throwing away everything they'd worked for. Instead, she found herself asking, what do you need from me? Tomorrow? Stay away from the challenge ground. If this goes wrong, I don't want you there. That's not what I meant. Tonight, right now, what do you need? Rokan looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression cracked. I need to know this wasn't for nothing. The recovery, the fighting, all of it. I need to know it mattered. Elena took his hand, felt the calluses and scars and tremor that never quite left. It mattered. It matters. Regardless of what happens tomorrow. Does it? If I lose, Dakar becomes chief. He'll undo everything, probably find a reason to exile you or worse. Then you can't lose. That's not really up to me. Yes, it is. Elena squeezed his hand harder. You think Dakar's advantage is physical strength, but that's not what this fight is really about. It's about who the tribe believes in, who they trust to lead them, and you've spent a month showing them you can make hard choices, negotiate peace, put the tribe's needs ahead of your ego. And Dakar's spent a month showing them he can take action and win. Action without wisdom is just violence. You've proven you have both. She leaned closer, willing him to believe her. Tomorrow, you don't need to overpower him. You just need to not quit. Show them you can take whatever he gives and keep standing. That's the real test. Rokan's eyes searched hers in the darkness. When did you become a strategist? Around the same time I became a prisoner who talked her way into being a healer. She managed a small smile. We're both making this up as we go. He pulled her down beside him, and Elena let herself be pulled. They lay there in the darkness, not sleeping, just existing in the same space. His breathing eventually evened out, but Elena knew he wasn't really asleep, just resting, gathering whatever strength he had left. She must have dozed eventually because she woke to gray dawn light and Rokan already up, moving through careful exercises. Stretching, testing his range of motion, preparing. How long have you been awake? Elena asked. Couple hours. Couldn't sleep anyway. She watched him move, cataloging the improvements and limitations. He was stronger than he'd been a month ago, steadier, but he still moved with the care of someone whose body had betrayed him, who didn't fully trust it yet. Let me check you over, she said. The examination was thorough. Pulse, reflexes, range of motion, strength tests. Everything was better than it had been, but everything was still compromised compared to what he should be. You need to be smart about this, Elena said as she worked. Dakar's going to try to overwhelm you early. Use his superior strength. Don't let him. Stay defensive. Make him work for every advantage. Tire him out. You've thought about this. I've thought about nothing else since last night. She pressed on his ribs, checking for residual tenderness. Your endurance is your biggest weakness. You can't sustain a long fight, but you can sustain longer than he'll expect if you're strategic. You're assuming he doesn't just knock me out in the first minute. He won't. He wants to prove his dominance, remember? Quick victory doesn't do that. He'll want to make you suffer first. Rokan caught her hands, stilling her examination. Elena, if this goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, I need you to leave. Immediately. Don't try to help me. Don't try to negotiate. Just go. I'm not leaving you. You have to. Dakar won't show you mercy. The only reason you've survived this long is because I've been protecting you. If I'm gone, then I'll figure it out. Like I've been figuring everything else out. She pulled her hands free. Stop talking like you're already dead. You're not dead until you're dead. That's very philosophical. I learned from you. The day crawled past with agonizing slowness. Rokan spent it mostly alone, following traditional pre-challenge rituals that Elena didn't fully understand. Meditation, prayers to ancestors, mental preparation. She spent it preparing for the worst, gathering supplies, planning escape routes, trying not to think about what Rokan's body would look like after Dakar finished with it. Dakota found her in the afternoon, his expression grave. The councils made it official. Challenge rules are set. Sunset at the challenge ground. No weapons, no interference. Fight until one yields or dies. And if Dakar kills him, then Dakar becomes chief and Rokan is buried with honor. Takota's voice was flat, emotionless. That's how it works. That's barbaric. That's tradition. Sometimes they're the same thing. He looked at her closely. You should leave before it starts. Head south. I can give you supplies, a map. You'll have maybe 6 hours before anyone notices you're gone. I'm not running. Elena, I'm not running, she repeated harder. I don't care how this goes. I'm not abandoning him. He asked me to make sure you got out safely. If he loses, then I'll deal with what comes next. But I'm not leaving while he's still fighting. Takota studied her for a long moment. You're in love with him. It wasn't a question, but Elena answered anyway. I don't know what I am, but I know I'm not running. That's either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. Sunset approached with the inevitability of a death sentence. The entire tribe gathered at the challenge ground, a cleared area near the river where disputes had been settled for generations. Elena stayed at the edge of the crowd, trying to remain invisible. Rokan entered from the east, wearing minimal clothing, his body on full display. Elena could see the visible improvements, muscle tone returning, the healthy color in his skin, the steadiness of his movements. But she could also see what everyone else saw, a man still recovering, still not at full strength, about to fight someone who had none of those limitations. Dakar entered from the west, and the contrast was stark. He was bigger, stronger, moving with the confidence of someone who knew he'd already won. His supporters cheered as he approached the center. The elder who'd moderated the council session stood between them. This challenge is witnessed by the tribe and bound by tradition. No weapons. No interference. The fight continues until one warrior yields or dies. The victor earns the right to lead. He looked at both men. Do you both accept these terms? I accept, Dakar said, his voice carrying across the crowd. Rokan's response was quieter but clear. I accept. The elder stepped back. Begin. For a moment, neither man moved. They circled each other, looking for openings, assessing. The crowd was silent, holding its breath. Then Dakar lunged. He moved fast, trying to use his size and strength to overwhelm Rokan immediately. His shoulder caught Rokan in the chest, driving him backward. They went down in a tangle of limbs, Dakar trying to pin him, Rokan twisting to escape. Elena's hands clenched into fists, every instinct screaming to intervene, but she forced herself to stay still. This was Rokan's fight. Rokan managed to roll free, coming up in a crouch. Dakar was already on his feet, pressing the advantage. A punch caught Rokan's shoulder, spinning him. Another grazed his ribs. But Rokan wasn't trying to match him blow for blow. He was doing exactly what Elena had suggested, staying defensive, making Dakar work for every hit, avoiding the worst of the damage. The fight devolved into a brutal grind. Dakar was stronger, but Rokan was smarter. He used distance when he could, angles when he couldn't, turned Dakar's momentum against him. It wasn't pretty, wasn't heroic, it was survival. Minutes passed, then more. Dakar's breathing became labored. He'd expected a quick victory, not a sustained battle. Rokan was bleeding from a cut above his eye, favoring his left side, but he was still standing, still fighting. Yield, Dakar growled, landing another hit to Rokan's ribs. You're already beaten. Rokan's response was to duck under the next punch and drive his elbow into Dakar's solar plexus. Not hard enough to do real damage, but hard enough to make him stagger. The crowd's murmur shifted. This wasn't going how anyone expected. Dakar's face flushed with rage. He'd been toying with Rokan, trying to demonstrate dominance. Now he was just trying to win. His attacks became less controlled, more desperate. Bigger movements, more commitment, which meant more opportunities. Rokan caught Dakar's arm on an overextended punch, twisted, and used the momentum to throw him. Dakar hit the ground hard, the impact driving the air from his lungs. For a heartbeat, Elena thought it was over. That Rokan had actually won. Then Dakar surged up with a roar, fury overriding technique. He caught Rokan with a wild swing that connected solidly with his jaw. Rokan's head snapped back and he went down.
The crowd gasped. Elena's hand went to her mouth. Dakar stood over Rokan, chest heaving. "Stay down! It's over!" Rokan pushed himself up to his hands and knees. Blood dripped from his mouth. His left eye was swelling shut. Every movement looked like it cost him, but he stood up. "Not yet," he said, voice rough but clear. Dakar hit him again. Rokan staggered but didn't fall. "I said stay down!" Another hit. This one drove Rokan to one knee, but again, impossibly, he rose. Elena couldn't watch, couldn't look away. This wasn't about winning anymore. It was about refusing to quit, about proving something that had nothing to do with physical strength. Dakar was breathing hard now, exhaustion and frustration written across his face. "Why won't you just give up?" Rokan wiped blood from his mouth. "Because they deserve better than someone who quits when things get hard." He moved forward, and even broken and bleeding, there was something in his bearing that made Dakar step back. Not retreating, just uncertain. "This isn't about us anymore," Rokan said, his voice carrying to the watching crowd. "It's about what kind of tribe we want to be. One that values only strength, or one that values strength and wisdom, violence and restraint, power and mercy?" More pretty words, Dakar spat, but his voice lacked conviction. Not words, choices. Rokan took another step forward despite his injuries. "You want to lead? Fine. Prove you can make the hard choices, not just the violent ones." Dakar looked around at the crowd, seeming to realize for the first time that the dynamics had shifted. People weren't cheering for his dominance anymore. They were watching Rokan refuse to quit, and it was saying something Dakar's strength couldn't counter. "This is pointless," Dakar said. "You're already beaten. Everyone can see it." "Then finish it, or walk away." The challenge hung in the air. Dakar's hands clenched into fists, rage and frustration warring across his face. He could keep fighting, probably win eventually. But it wouldn't look like the dominant victory he'd wanted. It would look like brutality against someone who refused to stay down. The silence stretched. Then Dakar turned and walked away from the challenge ground without another word. The crowd erupted in confused noise. Had he yielded? Forfeited? What did it mean when someone just walked away? The elder stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Dakar Kesh has left the challenge ground without victory or yield. By tradition, the challenge is forfeit. Chief Rokan retains his position." Rokan swayed on his feet, the adrenaline that had kept him standing finally deserting him. Elena was moving before she realized it, pushing through the crowd, catching him before he collapsed completely. "I've got you," she said. "You did it. You're still chief." "Did I win or did he just give up?" Rokan's words were slurred, consciousness fading. "Does it matter?" "Yeah, it matters." Then his eyes rolled back and he went limp in her arms. The next few hours were a blur. Elena got Rokan back to his lodge with Takota's help, assessed his injuries. Broken ribs, definitely. Possible concussion. Extensive bruising. Nothing that would kill him, but nothing minor either. She worked through the night, cleaning wounds, wrapping ribs, monitoring his breathing. He drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes rambling. Dawn was breaking when he finally woke up properly, eyes focusing on her. Did I dream the whole thing, or did Dakar really just walk away? He walked away. "You're still chief." Rokan tried to sit up, gasped in pain, settled back down. Why would he do that? Because you proved something he couldn't counter with violence. That strength isn't just about not falling down, it's about getting back up. Elena checked his pupils, satisfied they were responding correctly. "How do you feel?" "Like I got beaten half to death." "You did, but you're alive. Is that good enough?" "For now." She helped him drink some water, carefully supporting his head. "The council's requesting an audience whenever you're ready. They want to discuss next steps." "Next steps for what?" "For everything. Dakar's position, tribal leadership structure, your recovery timeline." She hesitated. "And your marriage proposal. Apparently that's still on the table." Rokan managed a weak laugh that turned into a cough. "Perfect timing. Nothing says romance like broken ribs and a concussion." "I'm serious." "So am I." He looked at her, and despite the swelling and bruising, his eyes were clear.
I meant what I said before the fight, about wanting you to stay, about this being more than strategy. Roken, I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, I know there are 1,000 reasons it shouldn't work. He reached for her hand, wincing at the movement. But I also know I don't want to build whatever comes next without you. Elena looked at their joined hands, his battered and bruised, hers shaking slightly. A month ago she'd been a captive expecting death. Now she was being asked to stay, to commit, to build a life in a world that had every reason to reject her. It was insane, impossible, completely irrational. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay? Okay, I'll stay. She took a breath. I'll marry you, if that's really what you want. Despite his injuries, despite everything, Rokan smiled. It's what I want. You're delirious. You have a concussion. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. You're the one who's not making sense. I'm the one making perfect sense. This is a terrible idea. Probably. He pulled her closer, careful of his ribs. But I've had enough good ideas that turned out badly. Maybe it's time to try a terrible one. Elena wanted to argue further, wanted to point out all the logical reasons this couldn't work. Instead, she found herself laughing despite everything, the absurdity of it all hitting her at once. We're both insane, she said. Agreed. But we're insane together, sane. That has to count for something. Does it? I'm choosing to believe it does. Outside, the camp was stirring, life continuing despite the drama, despite the challenges, despite everything. People needed to eat, children needed tending, work needed doing. And somewhere in all of that, there was room for two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and decided to hold on anyway. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't simple. It probably wouldn't be easy. But as Roken fell back asleep holding her hand and Elena watched the sunrise through the lodge entrance, she thought maybe that was okay. Maybe perfect wasn't the point. Maybe the point was choosing to try despite knowing it might fail. Maybe that's what courage really was. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The council meeting happened 3 days later, once Rokan could sit upright without his vision swimming. Elena helped him dress in his ceremonial clothes, her fingers gentle on the worst of the bruises that had turned his ribs purple and yellow. You don't have to do this today, she said for the third time. They can wait. They've waited long enough. Rokan tested his range of motion, winced. Besides, if I wait until I'm fully healed, we'll be having this conversation in 6 months. Would that be so terrible? Yes, because in 6 months something else will happen. There's always something else. He caught her hand. I need to do this now. While the challenge is still fresh in everyone's mind, while they still remember that I didn't quit. Elena couldn't argue with that logic, much as she wanted to. They made their way to the gathering space slowly, Rokan refusing any visible support despite the pain she knew he was in. The council had assembled in full, but this time, the crowd included more than just the core members. Family representatives, warrior leaders, tribal elders, everyone who had a stake in what came next. Dakar was there too, standing at the edge. He'd been conspicuously absent from camp since the challenge, and Elena had heard rumors of him staying with distant relatives, licking his wounds. Now he watched Rokan with an expression that was hard to read. Not quite hatred, not quite respect, something complicated and unresolved. The elder moderator called for attention. We gather to address the tribe's future. The challenge has been decided. Chief Rokan retains his position, but questions remain about leadership structure, about succession, about the stability of our people. Rokan stepped forward, moving carefully. I know there are doubts about my health, my strength, my ability to lead. The challenge proved I'm not who I was 3 years ago, but it also proved I'm not who I was a month ago either. I'm recovering, getting stronger, and I'm asking for your continued trust while I do. Trust requires proof, one of the council members said. Not hostile, just practical. What assurances can you give that you won't relapse, that the poison hasn't caused permanent damage? Elena tensed, but Rokan had anticipated this. I can't give absolute assurances, nobody can, but Elena has identified the source of the poisoning and eliminated it. She's developed a treatment plan that's working, and every day I'm regaining what was taken from me. He paused. I'm also proposing changes to prevent this from happening again. That got their attention. Murmurs rippled through the gathering. What kind of changes? Naira asked. First, all ceremonial objects will be examined by someone with knowledge of toxins and metals. Not just mine, everyone's. If there are other tainted items in circulation, we need to know. Smart, Elena thought, framing it as a safety measure for everyone, not just paranoia about his own poisoning. Second, I'm establishing a formal healer position. Elena has proven the value of different medical knowledge. We should incorporate that into our tribal structure. You mean give the outsider official status? Dakar spoke up for the first time, his voice flat. I mean recognize that we need diverse skills to survive. Elena's knowledge saved my life. It could save others. Rokan turned to face Dakar directly. Unless you're arguing we should reject useful knowledge because of where it comes from? Dakar's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Third, Rokan continued, I'm proposing a formal succession structure. If something happens to me, there needs to be a clear line of authority, not a power vacuum that tears the tribe apart. You have no heir, one of the elders pointed out. Not yet, but I'm taking steps to change that. Rokan looked at Elena, then back at the council. I'm asking this council to witness and approve my marriage to Elena Whitmore. The silence that followed was absolute. Then everyone started talking at once. Elena stood frozen as debate erupted around her. Some council members looked shocked, others thoughtful, a few openly hostile. The noise was overwhelming, voices rising and falling in waves of argument. The moderator called for order repeatedly before the crowd settled enough for him to speak. This is unprecedented. Marriage to an outsider, particularly one from a people we've been in conflict with. We've been in conflict with everyone at some point, Rokan interrupted. The Kiowa, the Comanche, other tribes, white settlers, the army. If we only married people we've never fought, we'd run out of options fast. That's not the same, and you know it, Dakar said. She's white. Her people have been pushing us off our lands for decades. Marrying her sends a message of weakness. It sends a message of adaptation, of recognizing that the world is changing and we need to change with it. Rokan's voice hardened. Or would you prefer we stay rigid and inflexible until we're destroyed? I'd prefer we stay true to who we are. Who we are as survivors. We survive by being smart, by taking advantage of every resource, by making alliances where we can. Rokan gestured to Elena. She's a resource. A skilled healer with knowledge we don't have. And yes, she's also someone I trust. Someone who's proven her loyalty. Someone I want by my side. Because you're thinking clearly? Or because the poison damaged your judgment? Dakar's words were cruel, but his tone was almost curious, like he genuinely wanted to know. Rokan met his eyes. Maybe both. Maybe the poison forced me to see things differently, to question assumptions I never questioned before. But that doesn't make the decision wrong. Naira spoke up, her voice cutting through the tension. The real question isn't whether this is traditional. It's whether it serves the tribe. Does marrying Elena strengthen Chief Rokan's position or weaken it? Does it bring value or create problems? It creates problems, Dakar said immediately. Half the tribe already questions his judgment. This confirms their doubts. Or it shows conviction, another council member countered. Shows he's not afraid to make hard choices. The debate continued, and Elena felt like she was watching her entire future being decided by people who barely knew her. Some spoke in her favor, praising her medical skill, her role in Rokan's recovery. Others spoke against, citing her outsider status, the political complications, the message it would send. Through it all, Rokan stood quiet, letting them argue it out. Elena wanted to speak up, to defend herself, but she knew it would only make things worse. This wasn't about her. It was about the tribe's willingness to accept change. Finally, the moderator raised his hand for silence. The council will vote. Bill, those in favor of approving this marriage? 8 hands rose. Not enough. Those opposed? 7 hands. 3 council members abstained, looking uncomfortable. The moderator's expression was troubled. The vote is 8 in favor, 7 opposed, 3 abstaining. Traditionally, marriage approval requires a clear majority. 8 out of 15 is a majority,
Rokan pointed out. A bare majority with significant opposition. Such divisions are not auspicious for a chief's marriage. Nothing about my chieftainship has been auspicious lately. That hasn't stopped me yet. The moderator sighed. Chief Rokan, I must advise, I'm not asking for advice. I'm asking for approval. 8 members voted yes. That's a majority. The marriage stands. You're forcing this through, Dakar said, using your position to override legitimate concerns. I'm using my position to make a decision. That's what chiefs do. Rokan turned to face the full gathering. I know this makes people uncomfortable. I know it's not traditional, but tradition isn't sacred just because it's old. It's sacred because it serves us. And when it stops serving us, we need to be brave enough to change it. The words hung in the air, challenging everyone listening. The marriage will happen in 3 days, Rokan continued. Anyone who objects is free to voice their concerns before then. But once it's done, I expect respect for my wife and her position in this tribe. He turned and walked away, ending the discussion by force of will, if not consensus. Elena followed, acutely aware of all the eyes on her back. Back in the lodge, Rokan finally allowed himself to show the pain. He sat heavily, breathing shallow, one hand pressed to his ribs. That went well, Elena said dryly. Could have been worse. How? They barely approved it. 7 people voted against us getting married. And 8 voted for. That's all we needed. Rokan, we're forcing this on a tribe that's already divided. What if it makes things worse? He looked up at her, exhausted but resolute. Then it makes things worse. But I'm not going to live my life based on what makes other people comfortable. I've spent 3 years dying slowly while everyone watched and worried. Now I'm recovering, and I'm choosing to build something with someone He stopped, searching for words. With someone who matters to me. If people can't accept that, it's their problem, not mine. Elena sat beside him, carefully avoiding his injuries. You were about to say something else. Before you caught yourself. Was I? Don't play dumb. You're terrible at it. Rokan managed a small smile. I was going to say someone I love, but that seemed like a lot for a conversation about council politics. The words hit Elena like cold water. Love. They'd known each other barely a month, had been through hell together, yes, but that wasn't the same as love. Was it? That's insane, she said quietly. Probably. We barely know each other. I know you saved my life. I know you stayed when you could have run. I know you defended Kiowa prisoners because it was right, even though it put you at risk. I know you sat up with me through fevers and treatments and political disasters without complaining. He shifted to face her better, wincing at the movement. I know when I think about the future, you're in it. That seems like enough to start with. Elena's throat was tight. Starting with love seems backward. Everything about this has been backward. Why stop now? She wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the logical reasons this was a terrible idea. Instead, she found herself leaning into him, careful of his ribs, and admitting what she'd been avoiding. I think I might love you too, which is possibly the stupidest thing I've ever said. I've heard stupider. When? About 5 minutes ago when I announced our marriage to a hostile council. Elena laughed despite everything, the sound half-sob. We're both idiots. Agreed, but we're idiots together. The next 3 days were chaos. Wedding preparations happened around them while Rokan continued recovering and Elena fielded increasingly pointed questions from tribal members. Some were genuinely curious about her background, her skills, her intentions. Others were clearly hostile, looking for reasons to object. The worst was a group of women who cornered her near the river on the second day. You think you can just come here and take our chief? One of them demanded. Just seduce him while he's weak and claim a position you haven't earned? Elena forced herself to stay calm. I'm not taking anything. Rokan asked me to marry him. I said yes. Because you're smart enough to know it's your best chance at survival. If you weren't his wife, you'd be an outsider with no protection. That stung because it wasn't entirely wrong. Marriage did give her protection, status, legitimacy she wouldn't otherwise have. Maybe, Elena admitted, but that doesn't make it the only reason, or even the main one. So what is the main reason? Love? The woman's tone made it an insult. You've been here a month. You don't love him. You love safety. I love that he gave me a chance when everyone else wanted me dead. I love that he listened to medical advice even when it sounded crazy. I love that he chose negotiation over violence with the Kiowa. I love that he stood in front of Dakar, half dead, and refused to quit. Elena's voice rose despite her attempts to stay calm. Maybe that's not romantic love. Maybe it's respect and gratitude and partnership, but it's real and it matters, and I'm not going to apologize for it. The women exchanged glances, something shifting in their expressions. Not acceptance exactly, but a grudging acknowledgement that Elena believed what she was saying. You're going to have to prove yourself, one of them said, less hostile now. Being his wife won't be enough. You'll need to show you belong here. I know, and I will. They left, and Elena sat by the river alone, shaking with adrenaline. This was what her life would be now. Constantly proving herself, constantly defending her right to exist in this space. The thought was exhausting. But when she returned to the lodge and found Rokan awake, his face lighting up when he saw her, some of that exhaustion faded. I heard you face down the river women, he said. News travels fast. They respect you for it. Standing your ground instead of running to me for protection. I didn't feel very respected. I felt like they were about to throw me in the river. Give them time. They're testing you. That's actually a good sign. How is that good? Because if they didn't think you mattered, they wouldn't bother testing you. They'd just ignore you. He patted the space beside him. Come here. Tell me what you said. Elena recounted the conversation, and Rokan listened with a small smile. What? She asked when she finished. Nothing. Just, you defended me. Our relationship. You didn't back down or try to make it sound like something smaller than it is. Should I have? No, but some people would have. You didn't. He took her hand. That matters. The wedding itself was surprisingly simple. No elaborate ceremony, no huge celebration, just Rokan and Elena standing before the council, an assembled tribe, making formal promises to each other in front of witnesses. Elena wore clothes borrowed from Naira, traditional dress that felt foreign but fit well enough. Rokan wore his ceremonial clothing despite the pain it caused to raise his arms for the fastenings. The moderator spoke about marriage, about duty, about the joining of lives and futures. Elena heard maybe half of it, too aware of Rokan beside her, of the crowd watching, of the enormity of what they were doing. Then came the vows. Traditional words in a language Elena was still learning, translated by the moderator. Do you, Rokan Veira, take this woman as your wife? To protect and provide for, to honor and respect, to stand beside through hardship and prosperity? I do. Do you, Elena Whitmore, take this man as your husband? To support and sustain, to honor and respect, to stand beside through hardship and prosperity? Elena's voice was steady despite her racing heart. I do. Then by the authority of this council and the witness of this tribe, you are married. Your lives are joined, your futures bound. It was done. Simple as that. Elena was married to a man she'd known for 5 weeks, in a tribe that barely accepted her, with no idea what came next. Rokan leaned in and kissed her, gentle and brief, mindful of his split lip from the challenge. The crowd made the traditional sounds of approval, some more enthusiastic than others. As they turned to face everyone, Elena saw Dakar standing at the back. He didn't look happy, but he didn't look murderous either. Just resigned, like he'd finally accepted that this was happening whether he liked it or not. The celebration afterward was modest, food, some music, people offering formal congratulations. Elena stood beside Rokan, accepting well wishes from people who ranged from genuinely warm to coldly polite. Dakota approached with 2 cups of something that smelled fermented. To the new couple, may you survive each other. That's not the traditional toast, Rokan said. Nothing about this is traditional. I'm improvising. He handed them the cups. But seriously, I'm glad you have someone, even if she is insane enough to marry you. I'm standing right here, Elena pointed out. I know, that's why I said it. But Dakota smiled, and it was genuine. Welcome to the family, such as it is. Elena drank, the liquid burning down her throat. Around them, the tribe continued their celebration, and for the first time since her capture, she felt like maybe she could belong here. Not easily, not without effort, but possibly. The real test came 2 weeks later when Elena discovered she was pregnant. She'd suspected for a few days. Missed cycle, morning nausea, the familiar signs she'd learned to recognize from her medical training. But suspecting and confirming were different things. She was in the lodge preparing Rokan's afternoon treatment when the certainty hit her. Pregnant, with Rokan's child, after barely a month together. "You're staring at those herbs like they personally offended you," Rokan said from his sleeping platform. He'd been getting stronger daily, able to move around camp now without constant pain. "What's wrong?" Elena set down the herbs, turned to face him. "I need to tell you something." His expression shifted immediately to concern. "What happened?" "Nothing bad. I think. Maybe. I don't know if it's bad or good or—" She took a breath. "I'm pregnant." Silence. Rokan stared at her like she'd spoken a language he didn't understand. "Pregnant?" he repeated finally. "Yes." "You're sure?" "As sure as I can be without more sophisticated testing. But yes, I'm sure." More silence. Elena watched emotions cycle across his face. Shock, confusion, something that might have been joy, then concern. "That's fast," he said. "I noticed." "Are you okay? I mean, health-wise, is everything but—" "I'm fine. It's early. Too early for complications." Elena sat beside him. "But I wanted you to know." Rokan reached for her hand, held it carefully like she might break. "A child. We're having a child. Apparently. That's incredible. That's—" He stopped, smiled. "That's terrifying." "A little bit, yeah." They sat there processing, the weight of it settling around them. A child. Born to a chief still recovering from poisoning and an outsider barely accepted by the tribe. A child who would be both white and native, belonging fully to neither world. "The council is going to have opinions," Elena said. "The council has opinions about everything. Let them." "Rokan, this changes things. Succession, politics, everything. A child gives you an heir, but it also gives people ammunition to question whether the bloodline is compromised by what? By you being white? By our child being mixed?" His voice hardened. "Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. That's not a strategy. That's aggression. Sometimes aggression is the right strategy." He pulled her closer. "We're having a baby, Elena. Our baby. That's not a political problem to solve. That's our future." Elena wanted to believe it was that simple. But she'd been in this tribe long enough to know nothing was ever simple. The announcement came 3 days later, at Rokan's insistence. Better to control the narrative than let rumors spread, he argued. Elena wasn't sure she agreed, but she deferred to his knowledge of tribal politics. The reaction was mixed, as expected. Some people were genuinely happy, a chief's heir, a new generation, a sign of hope and continuity. Others were openly troubled, an outsider bearing the next chief, a child of mixed blood, questions about legitimacy and tradition. Dakar's response was the most surprising. He approached Rokan and Elena after the announcement, his expression unreadable. "Congratulations," he said, and it sounded almost sincere. "Thank you," Rokan replied cautiously. "I mean it. An heir is good for the tribe, provides stability." Dakar looked at Elena, "Though I'm sure some will question the bloodline." "Let them question," Rokan said. "I'm not disagreeing, just stating reality." Dakar shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, I'm not going to pretend I'm happy about how things went. The challenge, the marriage, all of it. But you won. Fair or not, you won. And if you're having a child, that settles succession concerns." "Where's this sudden acceptance coming from?" Elena asked. "Pragmatism. I wanted to lead this tribe, still do, honestly, but fighting you forever helps no one. And a child, your child, gives the tribe something to rally around, something beyond our conflicts." He looked at Rokan. "I'm not saying I agree with your choices, but I can respect that you're committed to them." It wasn't friendship, wasn't even full acceptance, but it was something, a grudging acknowledgement that they were stuck with each other and might as well make it work. After Dakar left, Elena turned to Rokan. Did that just happen? I think so, though I'm not ruling out a head injury making me hallucinate. Your head is fine. I checked.
Then yeah, that happened. Dakar being almost reasonable. The world's ending. But the world wasn't ending. It was changing, which felt similar, but wasn't. The next few months were a blur of adjustment. Elena's pregnancy progressed normally despite the stress and primitive conditions. Rokan continued recovering, gaining strength daily until he could hunt again, fight again, lead again without his body betraying him. The tribe gradually accepted their new reality, a chief with an outsider wife, a coming heir of mixed blood. It wasn't seamless. There were still whispers, still judgment, still people who would never fully accept Elena. But there were also people who did accept her. Women who taught her their language, their customs, their ways of preparing food and tending crops. Men who respected her medical knowledge and sought her help when traditional healing failed. Children who saw her as just another adult, without the complicated politics their parents carried. Elena started training others in basic medicine, how to identify infections, set broken bones, recognize symptoms of serious illness. Some people resisted, clinging to traditional healing methods. Others embraced the new knowledge, seeing it as a tool rather than a threat. Rokan worked on rebuilding relationships fractured by the political struggles. He consulted Dakar on military decisions, acknowledging his experience even while maintaining final authority. He included council members from both factions in important discussions. Slowly, painfully, he stitched the tribe back together. It wasn't perfect. Conflicts still arose. People still disagreed. But they were disagreements within a functioning tribe, not battles for its soul. 6 months after the wedding, Elena went into labor. It was long and difficult, complicated by limited medical resources and the fact that this was her first child. Rokan stayed with her through all of it, ignoring tradition that said men should wait outside. She gripped his hand hard enough to bruise, cursing him in English between contractions. "Never again," she gasped at one point. "This was a terrible idea." "You said that about marrying me too," Rokan pointed out. "I was right then, and I'm right now." But when the baby finally came, a daughter, small and red and screaming with healthy lungs, Elena forgot about the pain. She held her daughter and felt something shift inside her chest, some final piece falling into place. "She's perfect," Rokan said, his voice rough with emotion. "She's wrinkled and angry," Elena corrected, but she was smiling. "Perfect," Rokan repeated firmly. He touched the baby's tiny hand, wonder clear on his face. "What should we name her?" They discussed this, debated names from both their cultures, trying to find something that honored both worlds without belonging fully to either. "Kiana," Elena said. The name meant ancient in one language, graceful in another. It was traditional enough to satisfy the tribe, but different enough to mark her as something new. "Kiana," Rokan tested it. "Kiana Veira." The baby gripped his finger with surprising strength, and Rokan laughed, pure joy mixed with terror at the responsibility they'd just taken on. News spread quickly. People came to offer congratulations, to see the chief's daughter, to witness this new beginning. Some brought gifts, others brought advice. A few brought thinly veiled concern about the child's mixed heritage. Elena was too exhausted to care. She held her daughter and let Rokan handle the politics, trusting him to navigate the complicated reactions. Dakar came by on the third day, when Elena was finally receiving visitors. He looked at the baby with an expression Elena couldn't quite read. "She looks healthy," he said. "She is," Elena confirmed. "Good. The tribe needs that." He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. "My objections were never personal. You understand that, right? It was about what I thought was best for our people." "I know." "Do you?" "Because I'm not sure anyone really believed me." He looked at Rokan, who'd been listening quietly. "I was wrong. About some things, not everything, but some things." "That's almost an apology," Rokan said. "It's as close as you're getting." But Dakar smiled slightly. "Raise her well. Teach her to be strong. The world she's growing up in won't be easy." "When has it ever been?" Elena asked. "Fair point." After he left, Rokan settled beside Elena and the baby, and they sat in comfortable silence. Did Dakar just give us his blessing? Elena asked.
I think he did, in his own grudging way. The world really is ending. Or beginning, depends how you look at it. Elena looked down at Kiana, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos she'd been born into. This child would face challenges neither of her parents could fully prepare her for. She'd be questioned, judged, caught between two worlds that didn't always understand each other. But she'd also have advantages. Two cultures to draw from. Parents who'd fought for the right to be together. A tribe that had learned, slowly, painfully, that survival sometimes meant adaptation. "What are you thinking?" Rokan asked. "That we have no idea what we're doing." True. That we're probably going to make a lot of mistakes. Also true. But that maybe it's enough to just try, to love her and do our best and hope it works out. Rokan kissed her temple gently. That's all anyone can do. The seasons changed. Kiana grew from a wrinkled infant into a curious toddler, learning to walk between two cultures with the ease of someone who'd never known anything different. She spoke both English and the tribal language, played with children of all backgrounds, saw the world through eyes uncomplicated by the conflicts that had shaped her parents. Elena became fully integrated into tribal life, her medical knowledge now simply part of their collective resources. She trained 3 apprentices, taught basic hygiene and wound care, saved lives that would have been lost to infection or complications. Rokan led the tribe through increasingly complex challenges. White settlement pressure intensified. Other tribes moved through their territory, displaced by the same forces. Resources grew scarcer. Every decision carried weight, carried consequences. But he led with both strength and wisdom, drawing on Dakar's military expertise when needed, consulting Elena on matters of health and diplomacy, listening to council members from all factions. The tribe remained divided on some issues, unified on others, but they remained together. 2 years after Kiana's birth, Elena discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the tribe's reaction was purely celebratory. No questions about bloodlines or legitimacy, just joy at another child joining them. "Told you they'd come around," Rokan said when she shared the news. "You said no such thing. You said it might take time and we'd deal with objections as they came." "I was thinking it very loudly. That's not the same." Their second child was a son, born easier than Kiana had been. They named him Takoda, after Rokan's brother, who'd become a steady presence in their lives and a devoted uncle to their children. With an heir and a spare, succession concerns finally quieted completely. The tribe had a future, clear and defined. Not perfect, not simple, but real. On a quiet evening, 5 years after Elena's capture, she sat outside their lodge watching Kiana teach Takoda to walk. The little boy was determined, falling repeatedly, but getting up each time with his sister's encouragement. Rokan joined her, settling beside her with the ease of someone whose body had finally healed. "You're smiling," he observed. "I'm watching our children. I'm allowed to smile." "No, it's more than that. You look content." Elena considered that. Content. Was that what this feeling was? She'd spent so long in survival mode, first after her father's death, then during her capture, then navigating tribal politics, that she'd forgotten what it felt like to simply exist without constant crisis. "Maybe I am," she said. "Is that allowed?" "I'll check the tribal laws, but I think so." Kiana called out to them, pointing at Takoda's latest successful steps. They both applauded, making the boy laugh with delight before he tumbled onto his rear. "Do you ever think about leaving?" Rokan asked quietly. "Going back to your people? To cities and doctors and the world you came from?" Elena had thought about it, especially in the early days when everything felt impossible. But now, watching her children, thinking about the life she'd built. "This is my world now," she said. "These are my people. You're my home." Even with all the complications? Especially with the complications. Easy doesn't make something right. Hard doesn't make it wrong. She leaned against him. "Besides, where else would I find a husband stubborn enough to survive 3 years of poisoning?" "Fair point." They sat together as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Around them, the camp settled into evening routines, fires being lit, food being prepared, children being called in from play.
It wasn't the life Elena had imagined when she left Philadelphia. It wasn't what she'd expected when she was dragged into this camp expecting death. But it was hers. Hard-won, complicated, built on impossible choices and stubborn refusal to give up. Kiana ran over, breathless and excited.
Mama, can you tell us a story? About before? Before what, little one? Before you came here, when you lived in the big houses with lots of people. Elena pulled her daughter into her lap, Rokan lifting Dakota to sit beside them. All right. But it's not a very exciting story. Tell it anyway. So Elena told them about Philadelphia, about her father's medical practice, about the cholera outbreak that had changed everything. She told it honestly, not sugarcoating the hard parts, not romanticizing the past. And when she finished, Kiana asked the question Elena had been waiting for. Do you miss it? The before? Elena looked at her daughter, dark eyes from Rokan, lighter hair from her, features that blended both bloodlines into something beautiful and new. She looked at Dakota, already falling asleep against his father's chest.
She looked at Rokan, who'd gone from dying chief to recovered leader to husband and father. Sometimes, she admitted, but I wouldn't go back. All of this is where I belong. Why? Because home isn't where you're from. It's where you choose to build your life, and I chose here. Kiana seemed satisfied with that answer. She curled against Elena, yawning, the day's excitement catching up with her. Rokan carried their sleeping children into the lodge, settling them onto their sleeping platform. Elena followed, watching him move with the easy strength of full recovery. Hard to believe he'd been dying when they met. Hard to believe any of this had seemed impossible once.
No regrets? Rokan asked as they settled onto their own sleeping platform. Hundreds of regrets, thousands of mistakes. More complications than I can count. Elena took his hand. But no, not about this. Not about us. Good. Because you're stuck with me now.
I was stuck with you from the moment I agreed to examine a poisoned chief. Should have run then. But you didn't. No, I didn't. Outside, the camp quieted into sleep. Inside, Elena lay beside her husband, listening to her children's soft breathing, and felt something she'd been missing for years. Peace, belonging, home. It hadn't come easily. It had required sacrifice, adaptation, countless difficult choices. It had meant letting go of who she'd been and becoming someone new. But looking at what they'd built together, a family, a future, a bridge between two worlds, Elena knew it had been worth it. The poisoned cup that had nearly destroyed Rokan had instead become the catalyst for everything that followed. His slow death had brought her into his life. Her outsider knowledge had saved him. Their impossible connection had evolved into something real and lasting. From poison had come healing. From conflict had come peace. From impossible circumstances had come a family that shouldn't exist but did. And in a world that kept trying to tear people apart, that felt like its own kind of miracle. Not perfect, not simple, but theirs. And that was enough.